Chapter 649. Behind them stood two other men. They were very short and looked a little like young Chulu. It was obvious who they were. The other one was extremely fat and tall. He looked rather intimidating. Behind them were a few cameramen. When everyone saw this, they looked at each other. Young Chulu's mother stood up first. "Where's young Chulu? Call her out." Sister Ling's eyes widened. "She's not here. Are you trying to scare me?" Young Chulu's mother put her hands on her hips and screamed, "I saw you hiding that little bitch in the house. You have to call her out today." The cameraman behind reminded her in a low voice, "Auntie, we're recording. You better not curse." Seeing such a shrewd image, it would be unreasonable even if they were reasonable. Feng Xiangli's expression changed and she immediately restrained herself. "Call young Chulu out. We have something to say to her." Meng Qingyu was furious when she saw young Chulu's parents. If Qiao Jin hadn't told her not to do anything, she would have gone up and made these people doubt their lives. Sister Ling snorted. "If she's not here, what do you want? This is my house. Be careful or I'll call the police. Don't talk nonsense with her. Young Chulu is inside. Mom, go and bring her out. She's waiting." The short young man behind her spoke. His gaze wandered over Qiao Jin's body, and he even swallowed his saliva. That gaze made people uncomfortable. Before Qiao Jin could say anything, Meng Qingyu flew into a rage. "Look at your mom. My fucking eyes are gouged out for you." For some reason, she felt that letting this kind of person see Qiao Jin was a serious stain. That kind of rage made her want to gouge out young Chulu's brother's eyes. When she scolded him, it gave him a fright. Such a delicate girl, when she scolded people, she was fucking fierce. Even Sister Ling was shocked. Young Chulu's brother was so scared that he hid behind his mother. Seeing her son being scolded, Feng Xiangli couldn't help it. "You little bitch, you scolded." She had just started cursing when she realized that she couldn't speak. Meng Qingyu placed his hand behind his back and secretly pinched it, controlling Feng Xiangli. Qiao Jin patted her hand, and she reluctantly let go. Feng Xiangli was talking when she suddenly felt as if her mouth was being pinched by someone. That controlling force was too obvious. She took a few steps back in fear. The others were somewhat baffled. The cameraman was carrying his camera. Although he wasn't interested in a quarrel between two shrews, the situation in front of him was still serious. What was the relationship between these two girls and young Chulu? Just as the photographer was working hard, he suddenly saw cracks appearing on the lens in front of him. It was as if a piece of glass had been shattered, and spider patterns had appeared on it. That lens was broken in an instant. The photographer was dumbfounded and even let out a howl. "What the fuck, this camera costs over 100,000 RMB. It was distributed by the station. If anything went wrong, they would have to pay with their lives. More importantly, how did it suddenly break?" The photographer was dumbfounded. Qiao Jin smiled faintly at the crowd. "Excuse me, we're leaving now." She elegantly walked in front of Feng Xiangli and extended her hand. "Where's young Chulu's ID?" Chapter 650. When she walked in front of the crowd, the oppressive aura hit them almost at the same time. It made it difficult to breathe. She was such a holy and elegant person, but now people couldn't look at her directly. Feng Xiangli lowered her eyes and looked at the ground. Her eyes were trembling, and she was inexplicably panicking. "No. I didn't bring it." Qiao Jin smiled. "You sold your daughter for 50,000 yuan, and to 3 men at that. To be a parent in this world, you don't need to go through a test. So it's this scary." When she said this, Meng Qingyu and Sister Ling's expressions changed. Feng Xiangli even blurted out, "How did you know?" Before she finished speaking, she realized that she had let it slip and her face was filled with horror. When the cameraman heard this, "What? Didn't you say that your daughter was unfilial and didn't give living expenses? What's with selling her to 3 men for 50,000 yuan? Qiao Jin's gaze shifted to his rather sturdy man. The man immediately took 2 steps back and waved his hand. She said it herself. We gave her 50,000 yuan. She was the one who agreed. He pointed at Feng Xiangli and explained what was going on. The situation in front of them was clearly a little strange. After all, they directly said the truth, which was a little unbelievable. But now, no one cared about this strangeness. When Sister Ling heard this, she exploded, 50,000. 50,000. You sold your daughter to 3 men for 50,000. I say, why are you so active in snatching people? You shameless slut, you will die a horrible death. Fuck your mother. When Feng Xiangli heard Sister Ling scolding, her expression changed. My daughter is something I gave birth to. I can do whatever I want with her. Even if I beat her to death, it has nothing to do with a bitch like you. When she said this, she covered her mouth in horror. What's going on? She clearly didn't want to say it. After all, there were reporters here. If this was broadcasted, she knew that she wouldn't be able to stand on the side of reason. Sister Ling was so angry that she was stunned. She raised her finger and rushed over to hit Feng Xiangli. Qiao Jin raised his hand to stop her, the corners of his lips still smiling faintly. Human trafficking is illegal, not to mention an adult. Since you're her mother and you say you can make the decision, then let's call the police and deal with it. Qingyu, don't call the police, don't call the police. When the man heard this, he became anxious. I'm not buying anymore, I'm not buying anymore. The people in the countryside didn't know much about the law. When they heard Qiao Jin say that he was going to call the police, they were anxious. They pointed at Feng Xiangli and shouted, You wait. If you don't return the money to me, I won't let this go. After saying that, she ran away. Actually, he might not be unaware of what was going on. This time, he was here to snatch people away from Feng Xiangli. If Yang Qiulu didn't listen, then she would be taken away. Who would have thought that Feng Xiangli, the idiot, would say it out loud? There were reporters behind them, and they had recording pens and cameras. The man was so scared that he ran away. Feng Xiangli was dumbfounded when she saw that the buyer had run away before she even saw him. The cameraman behind them was already dumbfounded when he saw that the camera had mysteriously broken. Now that they heard such a big secret, their minds went blank. Wasn't this too immoral? Even if they heard that it was going to be big news, when they heard that the person was going to be sold, they couldn't be so beastly. Wasn't this helping the evildoer? At that moment, they looked at each other hesitantly. Chapter 651. Young Qiulu's father hadn't said anything yet. Seeing that the situation was completely out of control, he immediately became anxious and reached out to hit Qiao Jin. Sister Ling broke free from Qiao Jin's control and slapped out. Young Qiulu's father's short body was hit by her and he was sent flying. Meng Qingyu wanted to help, but Qiao Jin said in an indifferent tone, All right. Following her words, everyone miraculously stopped what they were doing. Looking at the time, Qiao Jin turned to Meng Qingyu. Let's leave now. He Yao can get Yang Qiulu a message, and we'll be able to catch the flight tonight. By the time we reach Beijing, we'll be able to have dinner. Meng Qingyu nodded and pointed at these people. What about them? She was suppressing the fire in her heart. She was already a little angry, and it didn't feel good to be suppressed. However, she also knew that if she hit people, if Qiao Jin wasn't here, she might lose control. At that time, she would be in trouble. Xiao Jin said, "Someone will take care of it." Xiao Jin saw young Qiulu's future parents through the fate line. Their fate was extremely weak, and they would die miserably on the streets in their later years. Did they really think that raising a son was a treasure? Therefore, if Xiao Jin didn't care about these two people, the heavens would take care of them. The door was opened. Young Qiulu, who had just heard them talk with tears in her eyes, couldn't eat anymore. However, she only looked at Xiao Jin and said, "I have nothing to pack." She was alone and didn't even have her ID information. Her clothes couldn't be any more tattered. Now that she had lost her job, she had nothing to take with her. She could just leave with Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded. "Let's go." Just as young Qiulu's father was about to reach out to stop her, the group of people suddenly collapsed to the ground for no reason. Only Sister Ling was left. "Sister Ling," Xiao Jin turned to look at her and smiled. "You're a kind person. Good things will happen to you." Sister Ling trembled. She was shocked by the strange situation in front of her, but she quickly reacted and looked at Xiao Jin with a complicated gaze. Young Qiulu was also shocked by their sudden fainting, but she just wiped her tears and didn't say anything. Meng Qingyu whispered, "Will they find trouble with Sister Ling when they wake up?" "Xiao Jin, they won't be able to find me." Meng Qingyu was relieved. After leaving, Sis Ling couldn't help but shout, "Qiulu, live well when you're there." Young Qiulu turned around to look at her. When she saw Sister Ling, she suddenly turned around and knelt down, kowtowing to Sister Ling. Sister Ling's right's mother. "What's the matter?" Young Qiulu stood up again. Her frail body was like duckweed, on the verge of collapse. Her smile was a little pale. "Sister Ling, I won't forget. My life was given to me by you. I will definitely come back to find you." Back then, she had almost been kidnapped by human traffickers and her parents had caused trouble for her many times. It was Sister Ling who had helped her block it. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to live. Sister Ling was stunned. She looked at young Qiulu and thought of her past. The corners of her eyes were wet. She touched her eyes and smiled. "Go live your life." Young Qiulu smiled and left with Xiao Jin and the others. Not long after, Meng Qingyu suddenly turned back. "Leave your contact. Qiulu doesn't have a phone." Sister Ling gave it to him with a complicated expression. After waiting for Meng Qingyu to leave, she turned around and saw the group of people. Seeing that they had all fainted in front of the door, she rolled her eyes and kicked Feng Xiangli and her husband hard. While no one was looking, she closed the door with a bang. Chapter 652. While Xiao Jin and Meng Qingyu were on their way, Meng Qingyu called He Yao and explained young Qiulu's situation. Hearing that young Qiulu was specially brought back by the big boss, He Yao immediately understood what was going on. She didn't rush to ask anything and just followed Meng Qingyu's instructions to get young Qiulu's identity card information. The spirit group had special channels and was able to get things done quickly. Young Qiulu's ID card information was all there was to get a separate household registration. However, a temporary ID card was required to take the plane. Meng Qingyu even went to the local household registration office to get one. Young Qiulu was hungry and thirsty after the series of events. She only started eating when she almost fainted. Afraid that she would choke, Meng Qingyu bought soft bread. But at least everything was settled, and young Qiulu could leave with them. After booking the plane tickets, they would be able to board the plane soon. Along the way, through young Qiulu's intermittent narration, Meng Qingyu learned what kind of life young Qiulu had been living all these years. Young Qiulu was born in a small and isolated place, so it was normal for her to favor boys over girls. She had an elder sister who got married early and had a hard life. However, she was still able to survive and her husband treated her well. It was just that her parents would extort money from her from time to time. Fortunately, her husband's family was not to be trifled with. Her elder sister didn't suffer much after she got married. However, she didn't have the extra energy to save her younger sister. Young Cholu's life was miserable before her elder sister got married. After she got married, her life was even worse. Not only did she have to do heavy work at home, but her hands were also calloused like those of a 60 or 70-year-old person. When she was in high school, her family didn't allow her to study because they didn't have money. They even wanted her to drop out of school to support her younger brother. She wanted to study but had no choice. It wasn't until something unbearable happened that she escaped. At first, young Cholu didn't want to talk about it in detail. However, Meng Qingyu asked her out of curiosity. Young Cholu then slowly told him about it. Her parents actually found an old man from another village and took his money to get him to come to her place. In the middle of the night, if young Cholu hadn't noticed in time and ran away with the things, her life would have been ruined by her parents. When Meng Qingyu heard this, he sucked in a breath of cold air. He couldn't wait to go back and kill those two people. But in the end, he stopped. Young Cholu continued to shed tears as she recounted the rest of the story. Since then, she had been hiding in Mingnan City. She had neither money nor education, but at least she had attended junior high school. She worked in a small shop and was underage, so she could only earn some hard-earned money. The boss saw that her salary was cheap, so he said that his daughter had come to help with some work. That was how she was barely able to survive. In the end, she was still recognized by someone. Her parents came to find her and started to exploit her. She didn't dare to go back. At first, she wanted to run, but later on, she met the human traffickers in a black car. If Sister Ling, who was in the same car, didn't realize that something was wrong and saved her, she could only imagine what would have happened to her. Her nightmares for the first half of her life had never stopped. In the afternoon, Qiao Jin and Meng Qingyu came. They didn't say anything, but when Qiao Jin and Meng Qingyu said that they wanted to take her away, young Cholu didn't question it at all. Chapter 653. She would rather go with a stranger than live there. Meng Qingyu held young Cholu tightly. Seeing her pale face covered in yellowed skin, he couldn't help but tear up. In this world, there were always people who could live a miserable life beyond anyone's imagination. They bought first-class tickets. Sitting in the waiting room, young Cholu kept crying. The flight attendants came to ask about her several times. When they boarded the plane, she was already very tired. But this was her first time on a plane. Looking at the rising clouds outside the window, she couldn't suppress the desire in her heart. She didn't know why she was taken away by Qiao Jin, but she felt all the despair leave her in an instant. It seemed like she was really going to start a new life. The seats were separated. Qiao Jin sat in front of them. Meng Qingyu was too embarrassed to talk to Qiao Jin. When young Cholu finally couldn't take it anymore and fell asleep, Meng Qingyu switched to Qiao Jin's seat to talk to her. Young Cholu is too pitiful. Qiao Jin was silent as they talked. She kept silent about everything. When Meng Qingyu came to her side, she said, "You also feel that others are pitiful." Meng Qingyu held back for a moment and said, "I'm actually similar to her. But I lived a peaceful life on campus." Young Cholu's entire life was in the shadow of her parents. She told me that the saddest time was when she didn't meet Sister Ling. She didn't even have food to eat. She even went to the trash and picked up expired things that were thrown away by others. To her, it was a delicious meal. Everyone was pitiful. Seeing that Meng Qingyu could understand young Cholu and even think that she was luckier than her, Qiao Jin hooked her lips. Qiao Jin whispered, it's all in the past. For young Qiulu, it was all in the past. Meng Qingyu whispered to her, what should we do about young Qiulu? Let her continue to go to school. Young Qiulu had already passed the school year. She hadn't studied in a long time. She would study a bit, but she didn't have the spare money to buy books to study. Qiao Jin shook her head. It's up to her. She thought for a moment. Are you alone in your house now? Meng Qingyu nodded and took the initiative to say, she can stay at my place. She spent most of her time in school. Now that her mother was in a nursing home and the scumbag was dead, the house was empty. It was the best place for young Qiulu to recuperate. Let her rest for a while. Let her decide what she wants to do. The money will come from me. Qiao Jin didn't spend much money, and the fortune-telling shop had earned over 100,000 yuan. It was more than enough for young Qiulu and the others to live. Meng Qingyu whispered, I have one too. Qiao Jin just chuckled. You've just joined the spirit group. How can the spirit group continue to pay you? I'm the one who brought him here, so I'll take responsibility. Meng Qingyu thought about it and realized that this was a cruel reality, but he still nodded in agreement. As a university student, she had no other source of income other than her salary from the spirit group. Moreover, the spirit group's benefits were also good, and they were also paid monthly. She had just received it not long ago, and she still had to pay for her mother's pension every month. It was indeed a bit of a burden to raise another person. When they got off the plane, young Qiulu slowly woke up. It was her first time experiencing this. She was a little confused about this new city. With her own uneasiness, she stuck close to Meng Qingyu step by step, not knowing what to do. Chapter 654. It was already late that night in the capital, so Qiao Jin naturally had to take them to dinner. During dinner, Meng Qingyu took care of young Qiulu. On the way, Qiao Jin received a call from Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's voice carried a hint of a smile. Did you pick her up? Qiao Jin said, yes. He knew that Qiao Jin was going to pick someone up. Now that he received the news that Qiao Jin was back, it was not strange that she would call. Another sorcerer. Qiao Jin glanced at Meng Qingyu and young Qiulu at the table, then left the table and walked to the side. No, this one hasn't awakened yet. Her stimulation isn't enough. Song Yanqing thought for a moment. So, it's still possible for her to become a wizard. Qiao Jin said, yes. Song Yanqing couldn't help but laugh. Why do I feel like you're recruiting now? Every time he brought a wizard back, even the spirit group's specialized personnel weren't as good as her. Qiao Jin said, how is that for me? They were all contributing to He Yao. The main reason was that He Yao's influence in the spirit group had grown, which was a good thing for her. Qiao Jin had never been stingy with his own people. The salary and benefits of joining the spirit group were top-notch, so there was no reason not to let others join. Song Yanqing asked, are you eating now? Qiao Jin nodded. I just got off the plane, so I came over to eat first. I'll be back in a bit. Song Yanqing said, okay, let me know when you get home. Qiao Jin said, okay. After hanging up, young Qiulu put down her chopsticks and said timidly, I'm full. Qiao Jin didn't like to talk, so Meng Qingyu was the one who told her everything along the way. For example, who Qiao Jin was and what he did for a living. He didn't go into the specifics, but he wanted young Qiulu to understand that once they reached the capital, Qiao Jin would be in charge of her. She was extremely hungry. She had eaten bread before, and now she had eaten so much rice. She was a little bloated. Fortunately, she had stopped in time. Otherwise, it would not be good for her body if she was too hungry and ate too much. If you're full, you can go back with Meng Qingyu first. Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said, I'll transfer 50,000 yuan to Meng Qingyu. Since you don't have a phone now, this 50,000 yuan will be your living expenses for the next 2 months. If you save up, it should be enough for you to live for 2 months, right? Meng Qingyu, boss, do you have some misunderstanding about living expenses in the human world? Young Qiulu trembled, and her eyes widened. 50,000. She suspected that she was hallucinating. She had never seen so much money in her life, let alone 50,000 yuan. She had never seen so much money in her life. Now that she heard Xiao Jin give her so much money directly, and it was even her living expenses, young Qiulu was in disbelief. Meng Qingyu chimed in, that's too much. 50,000 yuan is enough for the two of us to live for half a year, and this is the more extravagant usage. Just give me 10,000 first, and I'll go help her set up some things. Xiao Jin said nonchalantly, just 50,000. You can use it according to the situation. I have plenty of money, so don't worry. Meng Qingyu, even though she knew that the boss was dressed extraordinarily, she still felt suffocated by the fact that she came from a poor background. Even when Meng Qingyu brought young Qiulu to the mall, young Qiulu was still in disbelief. Miss Qiao is really going to give me 50,000 yuan. But why? She had already saved her life by bringing her here, but she was still giving her so much money. What did she want her to do? Meng Qingyu looked at her phone. The money had already been transferred to her card through an app, and the card number was just given to Xiao Jin. Meng Qingyu laughed bitterly. Rich people are willful. I'll go buy clothes for you. Don't worry about these things. In the future, you won't have to starve or wear anything. Xiao Jin is a good person. Chapter 655. When Xiao Jin returned home in the middle of the night, she bumped into Mu Jinming, who was about to go out. She frowned. Jinming, why are you going out in the middle of the night? Mu Jinming saw Xiao Jin and glanced at her. You're back. My company's important client is in the capital. I have to go and pick him up. I'll be back later. Have you eaten? If you haven't, ask the kitchen to cook. Rest early. As a successful and elite member of the family, Mu Jinming had always been very busy. He left after saying that. Xiao Jin rubbed her chin when she saw him leave in a hurry. Mu Jinming was very busy. The Mu family didn't support idlers. She was earning money too slowly. It seemed like she shouldn't let Fei Fei give her living expenses in the future. She had never used it anyway. At this moment, Xiao Fei came down with a backpack like a thief. She bumped into Xiao Jin as soon as she came down. Xiao Fei, Xiao Jin, seeing that she was ready to go, Xiao Jin asked faintly, Fei Fei, where are you going? Xiao Fei, who had always been the one to question Xiao Jin, was stunned. You're back. She rolled her eyes. How could she say that she was playing cards with her best friend? Mu Jinming happened to go out, so she planned to slip away too. Looking at her daughter's cold and serious appearance, Xiao Fei recalled the excuse she used to go to the disco. She felt that she was standing on the moral high ground. Slowly, she straightened her back and said righteously, Mother has something to do. I'll be out for a while and we'll be back later. You stay at home and have a good rest. Look for your brother and grandpa. Xiao Jin, oh, you're going to play cards? Xiao Fei blushed and waved her bag. Why are you framing Mom for no reason? Who's going to play cards? I've never played cards at night. Xiao Jin, I've never gone to the disco either. Xiao Fei, she thought that she might not be able to leave the house, so she said, Go, go, go. Mama has something to do. Xiao Jin, okay, I'll call Jinming. I'm worried about you going out in the middle of the night. What's wrong with mommy going out to play? I don't even scold you when you go to the disco. Xiao Fei glared at Xiao Jin. He felt that his daughter was meddlesome today. Xiao Jin looked at Xiao Fei from head to toe. After a while, he said, "Okay, go if you want. I won't call you." Really? Xiao Fei was a little suspicious, and then he raised his eyebrows guiltily. You said it. Then I'll leave. Pretend you didn't see anything. Seeing Xiao Ji nod, she picked up her bag and was about to leave when she heard a voice behind her. Xiao Jin, you're back. Mom, where are you going in the middle of the night? It's already 10 o'clock. Xiao Fei, she turned around and saw a confused Mizuchu walking down the stairs. Xiao Fei smiled awkwardly. Weren't you reading in your room? There's no water in the fridge in my room. I came down to get some. Mizuchu saw Xiao Fei dressed neatly and was a little confused. Where's Dad? Your dad went to pick up a client. Mizuchu had a look of realization. You went to play cards while Dad was out. Xiao Fei was angry. Why are you all slandering me? Who wants to play cards? I've never played cards at night. Can't mommy have her own nightlife? Since someone asked me out, I happen to have time. I can't not go. Mizuchu shrugged calmly. It's not that I don't want you to go. If Dad finds out, you'll be scolded anyway. Xiao Fei. If you don't say so much, he won't find out. Chapter 656. Xiao Jin smiled and looked at Mizuchu. Chi-Chu, are you feeling better? Mizuchu nodded. I've been fine for a long time. Although the kidnapping was a little unexpected, it wasn't a big deal. He recovered after a day of rest. These few days, Xiao Fei let him stay at home because she was worried. Seeing them talking, Xiao Fei wanted to sneak out. At this time, Mu Xiangshan came back and bumped into Xiao Fei. He asked, "Where are you going?" Xiao Fei walked back angrily. As she went upstairs, she muttered, "I can't live anymore. There are spies everywhere." They all came out in the middle of the night without sleeping. Mu Xiangshan was puzzled, but he quickly understood. He looked at Xiao Jin and Mizuchu meaningfully and said, "Oh, your mother wants to go out. Mu Jinming is definitely not at home." Mizuchu smiled faintly. "Grandpa, you guessed it right." Mu Xiangshan waved his hand and snorted. "Not sleeping in the middle of the night and still wandering outside. Where did you learn this from?" Xiao Jin said, "Old man, where did you just come from?" Mu Xiangshan, he coughed. "Children shouldn't meddle in adult matters." He waved his hand and hurried away. Mizuchu chuckled and went into the storeroom to get some water. He said to Xiao Jin, "Go upstairs and rest." Xiao Jin nodded and said goodnight to her before going upstairs. She went back to her room. Not long after she took a shower, she heard a knock on the door. She opened the door and Xiao Fei stood outside with a serious face. "Mom wants to ask you something." Xiao Jin nodded. "Go ahead." Xiao Fei walked in and went straight to her wardrobe. She opened it and a black robe on the shelf was particularly eye-catching. She took it out, as if she had caught her daughter's important secret. She asked warily, "Whose robe is this?" Xiao Jin, "Oh, Song Yanqing's. I haven't returned it yet." Xiao Fei had found this robe when he was tidying up the wardrobe with the servants in the afternoon. It was like a bolt from the blue. This kind of black robe was extremely rare. It had a modern design style and was made of silk. With just a touch, one could tell that it was not an ordinary item. Most people couldn't afford it. At that time, Xiao Fei knew that it was most likely Lord Song's. There was only one suspicious man by Xiao Jin's side. She knew her two sons' wardrobes and clothes. They would not buy such a style, not to mention that it was found in Xiao Jin's wardrobe. Sure enough, Xiao Jin frankly admitted, Song Yanqing's. Xiao Fei's eyes widened. Really? When did you transmigrate from the Lord Song? He didn't wear this when he came. Xiao Jin said, last time, it was an accident. It was a little cold then, and he put it on me. You don't know, but I forgot to return it to him. I'll return it to him tomorrow. Xiao Fei really didn't know what to say for a moment. Seeing how calm Xiao Jin was, she really didn't know how to question him. After holding it in for a long time, Xiao Fei said, even if you're friends, you should keep a distance. Boys and girls were different. Xiao Jin was very puzzled. It's just a robe. Why should I keep a distance? Song Yanqing is my friend. This is not appropriate. Xiao Fei, she felt that her daughter seemed to have said something wrong. She felt that this way of thinking was not right. She had to teach Xiao Jin a lesson. Hence, she said, Jin, if you and Lord Song are just friends, you should also keep a distance. Chapter 657. Think about it. If Lord Song has another girlfriend in the future, and she knows that you're always with Lord Song, she'll be unhappy. After Xiao Fei's explanation, Xiao Jin instantly understood. She and Song Yanqing were friends. She felt that friends meant different things, so she never avoided anything. Now that she used modern thinking to explore it, it seemed that Xiao Fei's words made sense. In the past, she had only put Song Yanqing in her shoes. Now that she thought about it, what if he had a girlfriend? This relationship was different. Xiao Jin had watched a lot of melodramatic television dramas with Xiao Fei, so she understood this principle. This was because Song Yanqing had never had a girlfriend. It was hard for her to think about this. Thinking of this, she thought seriously. Song Yanqing doesn't have a girlfriend yet. Xiao Fei said, I'm just saying what if. Do you understand what I mean? Young Master Song is already 25 years old. Perhaps his family is in a hurry. This kind of family is hard to say. Maybe they'll find a match for him like your brother. When that time comes, young Master Song will be someone with a girlfriend. Little Jean, you've watched so many television shows with mommy. Those who try to get close to someone who already has a girlfriend aren't good women. She's a good woman. Xiao Fei said with righteous indignation. I hate green tea. I know you're not that kind of person, but you can't become that kind of person unknowingly. Your uncle, there used to be such a woman around. She said that she was your uncle's friend and often angered me in front of me. Fortunately, your uncle was decisive. After he found out, he didn't meet her anymore. Lord Song may not be such a person, but you can't let things get to that point. Xiao Jin suddenly understood. Xiao Jin understood. In the past, she could ignore other people's opinions. Now that she thought about Song Yanqing having a girlfriend, Xiao Jin had to consider this point. There was another reason why Xiao Fei didn't think that Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin would be together. That would be Song Yanqing's 25th birthday. And Xiao Jin was only 20. It wasn't because of age, but because Song Yanqing was too smart. He started his family business too early, which made others think that he had matured for too long. On the other hand, Xiao Jin was only a junior in her 20s. In terms of status, there was a gap between the two of them. The main thing was that Xiao Jin didn't have such thoughts. Xiao Fei wouldn't think that Xiao Jin liked Song Yanqing. Xiao Jin nodded. Got it. I'll be more careful in the future. Xiao Fei thought she understood. He nodded with satisfaction and put the clothes back. You can return the clothes to Lord Song tomorrow. Mom is going to rest. Good night. Xiao Jin said, good night. After Xiao Fei left, Song Yanqing called to ask if Xiao Jin was resting. It was 10 o'clock. It didn't match his resting time. He should be asleep. However, after his life providence returned, he might not need to sleep so early anymore. Xiao Jin said, it's time to rest. After thinking for a while, she asked again, aren't you looking for a girlfriend? Song Yanqing's heart skipped a beat. Why are you suddenly asking this question? Xiao Jin repeated Xiao Fei's words and said calmly, I think what she said makes sense. She didn't care about what others thought, but if Song Yanqing had a girlfriend in the future, she wouldn't allow herself to be a thorn in the side that hindered others' happiness. Song Yanqing was speechless. Auntie Qiao's thoughts were so righteous that she could even drive Xiao Jin. He was a little caught off guard. Chapter 658. Why are you suddenly bringing this up with Auntie Qiao? Song Yanqing still found it interesting. In private, Xiao Jin would also tell Auntie Qiao about this. Most importantly, Xiao Jin would really tell him. I still have your clothes the last time I went to your place. I forgot to bring them back for you. I'll bring them over tomorrow. Song Yanqing recalled the jacket he had put on for Xiao Jin last time, and a gentle expression appeared on his face. There's no rush. Aren't we friends? I don't have a girlfriend now, and it's not to the point where I need you to avoid me. Is our relationship a hindrance to others? Xiao Jin didn't comment. I know what you mean. No, I don't think you understand. Song Yanqing thought for a moment. It's not appropriate to discuss this over the phone. You don't have class tomorrow. Come out and meet me. I'll book a place and ask Bai to pick you up. Xiao Jin didn't think it was worth discussing, but since Song Yanqing had said it, she didn't object. Okay. Song Yanqing, okay. Rest early. Good night. Xiao Jin, good night. Xiao Jin woke up very early in the morning because she was going out. Early in the morning, she received a call from Meng Qingyu, who said that Yang Qiulu had something to discuss with her. She had an appointment with Song Yanqing at noon, so she went straight to Meng Qingyu's place. Meng Qingyu's house was in a relatively old neighborhood. After all, her family was ordinary. It was just that they had moved early in the past years, before the housing prices in the capital skyrocketed. Because of this neighborhood was a little old, but it had basic protective measures and greenery, so the environment was okay. There was a primary school nearby, and this house could be sold for millions. The surrounding area, even if it was an old neighborhood, was worth an inch of gold. There was no elevator in the neighborhood. She walked up and pressed the doorbell of Meng Qingyu's house. The door was opened by Yang Qiulu. She was wearing a brand new light yellow nightgown today. Her complexion looked much better than yesterday. Although it was still a dull yellow, there was a hint of liveliness in her eyes. When she saw Xiao Jin, a bashful smile appeared on her face. Miss Xiao. His voice was very polite, with a hint of caution. Xiao Jin smiled and said, You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Xiao Jin. The house was not big, and the smell of smoke came from inside. Meng Qingyu was making breakfast. Hearing the noise, Meng Qingyu's voice came from the kitchen. Xiao Jin, are you here? I'm making breakfast. I'm cooking noodles. Do you want to eat? I'll cook a bowl for you. Damn it, there's a poached egg. Xiao Jin said, There's no need. I already had breakfast before I came. Hearing this, Meng Qingyu stopped asking. Xiao Jin walked over and sat on the sofa. Compared to the last time she came here, this house had changed a lot. Meng Qingyu had thrown out everything related to Jingsong and her mother. She was completely disappointed. She did not want to see anything related to them in this house. Many things had been thrown out, and the house seemed a lot more spacious. There were many unopened packages on the floor. Most of them were daily necessities. Clearly, Meng Qingyu had brought Yang Qiulu to buy them last night. Yang Qiulu looked at Xiao Jin, a hint of shyness on her face. She sat on the stool opposite Xiao Jin and said carefully, "Qingyu said you're still in university." Chapter 659. Xiao Jin nodded. "Yes, I'm in my 3rd year." Yang Qiulu's eyes were filled with envy. "That's great." Back then, her grades weren't bad at all. But even so, her family didn't allow her to continue her studies. She was forced to drop out of school early, and later, she was hardened by life. Even if she wanted to study, she didn't have the energy or the will to do so. She often saw those students wearing school uniforms walking through the streets, smiling happily and showing yearning. She had the chance to become one of them, but she only had the chance. Thinking of this, she lowered her eyes again. Her fingers were nervously twisted together, and she looked a little sad. Her fingers were dry and yellow, and her skin was poor. They didn't look like the hands of a girl in her 20s. Xiao Jin stared at her and said softly, "Do you want to continue studying?" "That's fine too." Yang Qiulu shook her head and pursed her lips into a smile. "Thank you very much. I'm already very grateful that you gave me a chance to be reborn. However, I also know my current situation. After so many years, I've already forgotten most of my knowledge. I'm not very smart. Even if I go to school, I won't be able to keep up." Since she didn't want to go to school, Meng Qingyu must have called her for something else. Just then, Meng Qingyu came out with 2 bowls of noodles. The noodles looked simple and elegant. There was a poached egg and a few vegetables in the bowl. Although it looked simple and elegant, it didn't look bad. Meng Qingyu was used to cooking at home, so cooking a bowl of noodles was a piece of cake. She placed the bowl on the table, and Yang Qiulu hurriedly stood up to help. Xiao Jin looked at their lively appearance and fell into deep thought. "Meng Qingyu told you about the spirit group?" Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu froze and looked at each other. Meng Qingyu looked at Xiao Jin and said embarrassedly, "Yes, I did." Xiao Jin nodded. "It's fine. We'll talk about it after you finish eating." Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu nodded, and the 2 of them sat down to eat quietly. Compared to Meng Qingyu's slow eating, Yang Qiulu ate much faster. It wasn't that she was impatient, but she was used to it after so many years. Often, he would have to go to work in the middle of the meal. He worked against the clock. She was also used to doing everything quickly. By the time Yang Qiulu was done, Meng Qingyu was only halfway done. In the past, Yang Qiulu often lived a life of hunger and hunger. After she became an adult, her life was slightly better, but most of the food she ate was tasteless and cheap. Meng Qingyu's home-cooked noodles were incomparably delicious to her. Even when she was eating, she couldn't help but feel touched, and her eyes turned red. Before yesterday, she didn't even dare to imagine that she would live such a life. No one came to find trouble with her, no pressure from her parents. She was able to eat her fill, wear warm clothes, and sleep on a soft bed. Everything symbolized freedom and happiness. Just like how she thought when she first saw Xiao Jin, she really came from heaven. After eating, Meng Qingyu teased her, "You ate so fast. Be careful not to choke." Yang Qiulu finished the soup and whispered, "That won't happen." She waited for Meng Qingyu to finish eating, then cleaned up the dishes and went into the kitchen to wash them. She insisted on doing these things. Otherwise, she would feel uncomfortable in her heart. Meng Qingyu let her be. Chapter 660. After breakfast, the two of them sat in front of Qiao Jin and talked to Qiao Jin about why he had called her here. Do you want to become someone like Meng Qingyu? Meng Qingyu clearly didn't hide anything from Yang Qiulu. She would definitely ask if she told Yang Qiulu about her abnormal reaction. Meng Qingyu showed her a world that left her dumbfounded. It turned out that in this world, not everyone only cared about a mouthful of rice. Instead, they had more important things to do. Yang Qiulu thought about the first time she saw Meng Qingyu yesterday. Her body seemed to have reacted strangely, but she couldn't explain what it was. Today, she asked Xiao Jin to come because she wanted to try and see if she still had a chance. Yang Qiulu nodded and looked at Xiao Jin seriously. Will I have that chance? I heard Qingyu say that once you have the ability, you can do things. I can't let Miss Qiao raise me for nothing. Xiao Jin looked thoughtful. Her expression was calm. I'm not trying to stop you, I have a way, but you have to think clearly. You didn't awaken yesterday because you didn't receive enough stimulation. If you want to awaken, I have to send you back to the past and let you experience everything again. This process may be very long, or it may be very short, but your past is an incomparably painful memory to you. If you can't bear it, there's a high chance that other mishaps will happen. Are you sure? Are you sure? She could use the backtrack formation to send Yang Qiulu's consciousness back to the past and let her experience everything again. But to Yang Qiulu, those were all terrifying nightmares. Who would be willing to go back to their nightmares and experience them again? A trace of pain flashed across Yang Qiulu's eyes. No matter how painful it is, I've experienced it. She was also very afraid. But now that she had escaped from that demon's den, what else could she feel? Qiao Jin slowly shook his head. In the backtrack formation, you won't remember what happened in the present. You'll only treat it as your life. In other words, if she really experienced it, it would even cause her to experience more pain. It would be fake. Even if her body wasn't in it, her mind was experiencing it. She couldn't distinguish between reality and illusion. Yang Qiulu shuddered. Meng Qingyu was also a little alarmed. Why don't we just let it go? That was equivalent to reliving the past without any memories. Even Meng Qingyu would find it a nightmare, let alone Yang Qiulu, who had just recovered. Yang Qiulu silently lowered her head, wringing her fingernails and thinking for a long time. She was still afraid and in despair. But when she thought about how she had already escaped from the demon's den, she raised her head and cautiously said, I want to give it a try. Qiao Jin paused. Sure. It was too easy to make Yang Qiulu relive her past by using the backtracking array points. Qiao Jin raised her hand. This time, Meng Qingyu could clearly see a few red dots flashing in her eyes. It was as if an airtight net had descended from the sky. Qiao Jin pointed at Yang Qiulu. Yang Qiulu's body stiffened, and she slowly closed her eyes. His face was calm, as if he had just fallen asleep. Meng Qingyu was a bit confused. How long will it take for her to wake up? Qiao Jin slowly shook his head. It's hard to say. It depends on her willpower. The longer it takes, the deeper the effect. If she doesn't wake up, it's very likely that her brain nerves will be stimulated. After breakfast, the two of them sat in front of Qiao Jin and began to talk to Qiao Jin about why he had called her over. Do you want to become someone like Meng Qingyu? Meng Qingyu clearly didn't hide anything from Yang Qiulu. If he told Yang Qiulu about his abnormal movements, Yang Qiulu would definitely ask about it. Meng Qingyu showed her a world that left her dumbfounded. It turned out that in this world, not everyone only cared about eating. They had more important things to do. Young Qiulu thought about the first time she saw Meng Qingyu yesterday. There seemed to be something strange in her body, but she couldn't explain what it was. Today, she had called Xiao Jin over to see if there was still a chance. Young Qiulu nodded and looked seriously at Xiao Jin. Will I have that chance? I heard Qingyu say that once you have the ability, you can do things. I can't let Miss Qiao raise me for nothing. Xiao Jin looked pensive. Her expression was calm. I'm not trying to stop you, I have a way, but you have to think clearly. You didn't awaken yesterday because you didn't receive enough stimulation. If you want to awaken, I have to send you back to the past and let you experience everything again. This process may be very long, or it may be very short, but your past is an incomparably painful memory to you. If you can't bear it, there's a high chance that other accidents will happen. Are you sure? Are you sure? She could use the backtracking matrix to send Yang Qiulu's consciousness back to the past and let her experience everything again. But to Yang Qiulu, those were all terrifying nightmares. Who would be willing to go back to their nightmares and experience them again? A trace of pain flashed across Yang Qiulu's eyes. No matter how painful it is, I've already experienced it. She was also very afraid. But now that she had escaped from that demon's den, what else could she feel? Xiao Jin slowly shook his head. In the backtracking matrix, you won't remember what happened in the present. You'll only think of it as your life. In other words, if she truly experienced it, it might even produce an even more painful and false path. Even if her body wasn't in it, her mind was truly experiencing it. She couldn't tell the difference at all. Young Qiulu trembled. Meng Qingyu was also a little frightened. Why don't we just forget about it? That was equivalent to experiencing the past again without any memories. If it was Meng Qingyu, he would think it was a nightmare, let alone Yang Qiulu who had just recovered. Yang Qiulu silently lowered her head. She fiddled with her fingernails and thought for a long time. She was still afraid. She was in despair. But when she thought of how she had escaped from that demon's den, she raised her head and carefully said, I want to try again. Xiao Jin paused. All right. It was too easy to make Yang Qiulu experience her past again by using the backtracking array points. Xiao Jin raised his hand. This time, Meng Qingyu clearly saw a few red dots flickering in her eyes. It was as if an airtight net had descended from the sky. Xiao Jin pointed at Yang Qiulu. Yang Qiulu's body stiffened, and she slowly closed her eyes. Her expression was calm, as if she had just fallen asleep. Meng Qingyu was a little confused. How long will it take for her to wake up? Xiao Jin slowly shook her head. It's hard to say. It depends on her own willpower. The longer she drags it out, the deeper the effect on her. If she doesn't wake up, it's very likely that her brain nerves will be stimulated. Chapter 661. Although it was a bit strange for modern technology to ask, it was the truth. The human brain was fragile to begin with. If it was forced to play painful scenes, it would definitely affect the brain. Meng Qingyu was a bit worried and could only stand guard. Xiao Jin said, I have an appointment at noon. If Yang Qiulu doesn't wake up by tonight, I'll drag her out. You just need to stand guard here. As long as no one wants to kill her, she'll be fine. Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing didn't know how many reincarnations they'd spent in the backtrack formation last time. It had been several days. Yang Qiulu would definitely take a bit longer. Meng Qingyu hurriedly nodded. Go do your thing. Xiao Jin nodded and lowered his head to glance at Yang Qiulu. Seeing that she still looked calm, he sighed softly. She didn't stop them because she had already sensed Yang Qiulu's inner thoughts. Since she insisted on walking, she wouldn't stop her. The backtrack formation could stimulate her awakening, but it would also stimulate her in other ways. It was the same pain. After Qiao Jin left, Meng Qingyu looked at Yang Qiulu and arranged a comfortable position for her to lie on the sofa. He could only curl up beside her and play with his phone. Yang Qiulu felt like her life was covered by a thick, dark cloud that couldn't be removed. It was so heavy that she couldn't breathe. She carried a basket of pigweed on her back. Her thin and weak body carried a large basket that didn't make sense. In front of her was her mother, Feng Xiangli, carrying her youngest son, Yang Qiulu's younger brother. For the 4-year-old Yang Qiulu, the scene of her mother hugging and kissing her younger brother was her deepest memory. After kissing her precious son for a while, Feng Xiangli felt that Yang Qiulu was walking slowly. She turned around and scolded, "Why aren't you walking faster? Are you trying to be lazy? You wastrel, do you think I've been raising you for nothing? You're even taking so long to carry pigweed." Feng Xiangli's words were mixed with a string of nasty insults. The little Yang Qiulu didn't really understand what she was saying, but she knew that she was being scolded. Her withered fingers clutched at the rope that had already dug into her shoulder. Step by step, she walked forward slowly and heavily. She seemed to be moving a bit faster than before. Feng Xiangli rolled her eyes as she continued to walk forward while cursing. She gave birth to 3 losers in a row. After selling the youngest one, the family's living conditions improved a little. Until last year, when she finally gave birth to a precious son, Feng Xiangli suddenly felt that her status in the village had risen significantly. Even when she walked, she seemed to carry the wind with her. Other people always said that she didn't treat her daughter well. Their family didn't have a good-for-nothing, so of course, they didn't know what kind of life her family was living. If he didn't force them, how would they survive if they only had a few mouths to feed? Yang Qiulu was hot and tired, but she still insisted on carrying the basket home. Her mother carried her little brother inside to rest. She stood in the frozen courtyard and looked at the sky outside the window. The rays of the setting sun shone down. She looked up at the sky and seemed to see a girl's smiling face. She was very cold and also very beautiful. In the little Yang Qiulu's heart, the most extreme adjective she could think of was that she was a fairy. She didn't know why she could see fairies, but it also seemed like she was seeing things. Most of the time, it was like her own illusion. Yang Qiulu knew that there was no such person around. Such a fairy couldn't exist in the human world. Chapter 662. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing made an appointment at the Chinese restaurant that they had been to once. Because it was quiet, the food was delicious, and it was also suitable for talking. I took Qiao Jin to the place first and told her that the young master would be a little late because he was having a meeting. Recently, the young master's health had been good. Song Yin obviously handed over more things to Song Yanqing. Because the Song family was so big, Song Yanqing had to quickly take control of it. He carried more things on his shoulders than ordinary people. The waiter here gave her some exquisite tea and snacks to pass the time. She sat in a private room upstairs by the window. Outside the window was the elegant environment here, and she could see the mountains and rivers flowing. In the capital, such a scenic area was obviously expensive. Unexpectedly, she saw a person. A man in a black robe with his whole face buried in the hood. She could only see that he was very short. He was coming out of the corridor and went straight to other places. Qiao Jin remembered that she had seen this person before. Their aura was the same. He was the spiritual reader next to Ji Sikai. She twisted a piece of snack and stuffed it into her mouth. She poked her chin, looking a little bored. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait long before Song Yanqing arrived. When he pushed the door open and came in, he was wearing a white suit. If a man like him wore white, he would be more noble and impossible to ignore. Coupled with his temperament as gentle as jade, he was just a peerless nobleman that people couldn't take their eyes off. When he came in, there was a smile at the corner of his mouth, which seemed to be able to bewitch people. Even the voice that called her was particularly lingering. Xiao Jin. In front of such a person, such an appearance was enough to make some people completely lose their defense. Xiao Jin nodded and looked over. You're done with work. Well, are you in a hurry? Sorry. She shook her head. No. Song Yanqing said naturally, I've been doing a lot of things recently, so I'll be very busy. Now that his body had fully recovered, he had begun to consciously win over more things for his father. The Song family was such a big corporation. In the past, when he was weak, there were more or less people who were not convinced by him. Now, what he wanted was for these people to get rid of any thoughts that they shouldn't have. Song Shireen seemed to know something as well. Recently, she had begun to hand over more important matters to Song Yanqing, either intentionally or unintentionally. It was as if she wanted to retire to the second line. Therefore, there had been a lot of turmoil in the company recently. Even Song Suyu had come back to help. Xiao Jin nodded, and the waiter served them tea. After confirming that they wanted the same old rules, he left quietly. Once the door was closed, the surroundings became quiet. Apart from the open window, there was the occasional sound of singing. It was unknown where the singing came from, but it made people feel sleepy. When only the two of them were left in the room, Song Yanqing's voice was still as beautiful and deep as ever. What you said yesterday did make sense. Even if I don't care about my future girlfriend, at least I have to care about your reputation. There was an elegant smile at the corner of his mouth, noble and graceful. He looked at Xiao Jin, and his dark and deep eyes seemed to be able to reflect her entire person. He said, so I thought a lot and realized that some things have to be made clear sooner or later. In this life, I don't want to have any friends other than you. Xiao Jin, can we try dating? For the first time, Xiao Jin looked at him with some surprise. Chapter 663. Yesterday, when Song Yanqing said that he wanted to discuss it with her, she thought that he was going to propose some ideas on this issue. It was indeed a constructive idea. Xiao Jin did not think of it at that moment, so she was really a little surprised. After all, in her life, even if she was alive in the past, no one had said such words to her. She looked at Song Yanqing, looked at his flawless face, and frowned slightly. Why? She could not be blamed for asking this. After all, in her mind, she never felt that dating someone was a necessary process. It was inevitable that she would not be used to it if she had not experienced it. Moreover, she came from 10,000 years ago. Song Yanqing just smiled gently. Why do you think it is? I know what you think, but you see, Auntie Qiao thinks that we are friends and will affect my future girlfriend's opinion. She means that we are too close. You didn't care about others' opinions in the past, but you care about the feelings of the people around me. Then, you can think about my feelings. You said that friends are like this. Then, we can be better friends. But in the eyes of others, we need a more suitable relationship. Then, we can try to date. I don't want others to think that you are the kind of girl that Auntie Qiao said. You can continue to get along with me in the name of dating. If you feel that it is not suitable, we can end it at any time. So, what do you think? His voice was elegant and low, and Xiao Jin felt that what he said was very reasonable. She and Song Yanqing were friends. She did not care to what extent she would get along with Song Yanqing. Yesterday, Qiao Fei's words reminded her that Song Yanqing would always have a girlfriend who was closer to him. Girlfriend and friend, these were two different dividing lines. Seeing that she was looking at him with her eyes open and her fingertips on her chin, but she was frowning slightly. Obviously, she was thinking. Song Yanqing laughed softly and said, I thought about it for a long time last night. If I say that I am not looking for a girlfriend, it will seem too fake. But I don't want to put you in a difficult position. I only feel that you are my friend, so I don't want to change anything with you. So, this is the only way. If they started dating, the two of them would have a more legitimate reason to be together. So to Xiao Jin, what was dating? She had told Xiao Fei that she would not get married. She liked the Mu family and Song Yanqing. However, perhaps she still couldn't understand the deeper meaning behind this like. Admittedly, it didn't matter if he was estranged from Song Yanqing, but they were friends after all. It was nothing more than a change in their relationship. If it was him, it wouldn't matter. Because it was only a change in name, her relationship with Song Yanqing would not change at all. Thinking of this, she slowly nodded. Okay. Song Yanqing felt as if a rock had been lifted from his heart when he saw Lin Mingyao's straightforward agreement. On the surface, however, he was calm and collected, and the smile on his lips became even gentler. Okay, in the future, I will tell my family that you are my girlfriend. Xiao Jin made a sound of acknowledgement, looking extremely obedient. It also made his heart soften. In this case, she could also tell Xiao Fei, so that Xiao Fei would not always worry about her going astray and would often ask her all kinds of questions. She said that it was like this in the TV series. The relationship between the two of them seemed to be so simple and natural. Chapter 664. The change in his relationship with Song Yanqing didn't seem to mean anything. It was just that he now had a legitimate reason to avoid other people's doubts. After dinner, Song Yanqing was still as gentle as ever. Shall I ask Ozai to send you back? Xiao Jin shook his head. I have something to do today. I have to go to Meng Qingyu's house tonight. Song Yanqing knew who Meng Qingyu was. He nodded. Then you can go do your thing. He had other things to do in the afternoon. Even if Xiao Jin felt bored, he would only be more bored if he came to him. Of course, now that the two of them had officially started dating, Song Yanqing would arrange some things. It wouldn't feel abrupt like before. For example, he could occasionally ask Xiao Jin to go somewhere else to play. When he went downstairs with Song Yanqing, Xiao Jin asked, Are Ferdinand and the others back in China now? Song Yanqing nodded. Yes. Ferdinand wasn't dead, but compared to being dead, his condition was worse than imagined. After returning to New York, he was quickly sent to the hospital by Louisa and Shi Kanyun, and it was announced that Ferdinand would stop work indefinitely. All his entertainment plans were put on hold. Because Ferdinand's body couldn't withstand any torment now. Song Yanqing didn't kill them because their karma had been shouldered by someone else. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left such a disaster behind. However, Song Yanqing didn't need to tell Xiao Jin about such a thing. Xiao Jin nodded and didn't ask in detail. He only said, Do you have any clues about the fan's location? Song Yanqing sighed slightly. I haven't found it yet. He had already drawn the pattern on the fan and asked the people under the group to look for it. However, even if it was the north and south of the Yangtze River, it was still difficult to find the corresponding location with just an ink painting. In particular, there was no restriction on whether it was domestic or foreign. Xiao Jin was just asking about it as usual, so he simply said, There's no hurry. Now that young Qiulu had come out from the second array point, since they could sense each other, Xiao Jin believed that the remaining array points wouldn't take long. As long as he could find the 9 array points, he would know what had happened. After parting with Song Yanqing, she went to Meng Qingyu's house while Song Yanqing returned to the company. His good mood was obvious, so much so that when he was in the car, there seemed to be a faint smile on his lips. This made Ah Yi curious. Young master, why are you so happy? Song Yanqing looked up and smiled. He didn't say anything for the time being. Although I don't know the reason, I can roughly guess it. Could it be that young master was no longer single? Or with Miss Chow? Azuo could not help being frightened. But on second thought, even the young master was able to get rid of being single with Miss Chow, yet he himself was still single for 10,000 years. It was really sad to the point of tears. When would the love that belonged to him come? Song Yanqing ignored Ye's thoughts. His slender fingertips rubbed on the phone and soon moved to Chow Jin's WeChat name. He saw the words, "amazing little friend," and his eyes gradually deepened, but there was still joy in them. After a long time, he moved his fingers and changed the line of words. "My little friend." It seemed that it was very suitable. He put down the phone with satisfaction. So obedient. Just like his current impression of Chow Jin. Although he was cold, he was always obedient in front of him. As obedient as a child. Chapter 665. When Chow Jin arrived at Meng Qingyu's house, young Qiulu was still asleep. However, she wasn't as calm as she was at the beginning. Young Qiulu's brows were tightly furrowed in her sleep, as if she was extremely uneasy. Occasionally, her body would twitch. All these signs indicated that her experience in the backtrack formation wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. At first, Meng Qingyu was still flustered, but when he saw Chow Jin, he relaxed a lot. He couldn't help but ask Chow Jin, "She should be fine now, right?" Chow Jin shook his head. "She's fine. She's just met with an exciting point in her life. Whether she awakens or not, there will always be an end." Young Qiulu felt that her life had always been a tragedy. When she was 15 years old, she felt someone holding her down in the middle of the night. She opened her eyes in horror and found that it was a completely unfamiliar face. No, it wasn't unfamiliar either. It was a famous old bachelor in the village. He hadn't married in his entire life because his family was poor and couldn't find a wife. Right now, that ugly old face was looking at young Qiulu lecherously. Feng Xiangli's voice came from outside the door. "Hurry up, there are still people waiting." The old bachelor waved his hand. "I know," he looked at young Qiulu with a perverted smile. Even though young Qiulu was young, she knew what was going on. She looked at the old bachelor and her eyes widened. She screamed, but before she could say anything, the other party quickly covered her mouth. "Shoot, baby girl, I gave your mother a few dozen yuan. Tonight, you're mine." A few dozen yuan, a few dozen yuan. Hearing this, young Qiulu felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She couldn't believe that something like this would happen to her. Tears flowed down her cheeks. They were tears of despair. How could this happen? Why would her mother do such a thing? While she was crying, the old bachelor didn't care so much and started leaning on young Qiulu. Young Qiulu was terrified. Her body instinctively resisted, but she ended up kicking between the old bachelor's legs. The old bachelor's expression changed and turned ferocious in an instant. The pain was so intense that he didn't have the strength to restrain young Qiulu. Somehow, young Qiulu found the energy to push him away and crawl out. She screamed and ran out the door. Because she had suddenly run out, her parents were just outside, so they didn't manage to stop young Qiulu. The two of them looked at each other, and Feng Xiangli immediately said, "Not good." If the people in the village knew about this, they would be scolded behind their backs. They also knew that what they had done was dirty and unspeakable. Her parents chased after young Qiulu, scolding her as they chased after her. "What are you running for, you wretched girl? Hurry up and come back, you money-losing thing." Young Qiulu was scared out of her wits. She didn't dare to go back. His scalp went numb. Other than running, he didn't know what else he could do. But in the end, she was small and weak and couldn't run. After a while, she heard the shouting behind her getting closer and closer. Her heart turned cold and in a fluster, she stepped on a stone and fell to the ground again. Feng Xiangli caught up and slapped her in the face. Paw! A crisp sound was heard, accompanied by a burning pain. Chapter 666. Young Qiulu began to wail loudly, "Mom, no, no." She was screaming and struggling. Everyone in the village could hear her wails. But they all thought that Feng Xiangli was hitting the child again. It was common for her to hit the child, so no one could stop her. Those who couldn't stand it and tried to stop it would be bitten by Feng Xiangli and her husband, who would scold them for being nosy. The village couldn't control such a scoundrel, so they couldn't do anything about Yang Qiulu's situation. Feng Xiangli was afraid that she would scream something she shouldn't, so she joined forces with Yang Qiulu's father to cover her mouth. She pinched Yang Qiulu's flesh and scolded her through gritted teeth, "You damned girl, don't you know that the family can't afford to eat? What's wrong with asking you to contribute to the family? You're just a money loser, and that's all you can do. You have to go today even if you don't want to. You're just a money loser now." Young Qiulu's father covered her mouth and said coldly, "Qiulu, I don't want to do this either, but I have no choice. I'm not that capable, and we still have to take care of your brother. We have no choice." With her mouth covered, young Qiulu could only whimper in despair. Her voice couldn't stop wriggling. The strength of a person in a desperate situation was shocking. They couldn't carry Yang Qiulu away, so they could only hold her down and try to drag her away by force. Feng Xiangli covered her mouth with all her might, but she was afraid that she would suffocate her to death. She grabbed her shoulders and dragged her back. Young Qiulu's legs couldn't stop wriggling. She grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground, which sank into her fingernails, showing her despair and helplessness. Whoa whoa whoa. In desperation, she bit Feng Xiangli's finger. Feng Xiangli felt the pain and slapped her again. She was so angry that she picked up a stone from the side of the road and threw it at Yang Qiulu's head. Bang! Yang Qiulu saw stars from the impact, but she didn't faint. Seeing blood coming out of her head, young Qiulu's father panicked. He hurriedly scolded, "You damned woman, are you crazy? Are you going to compensate her if she dies? I'm still counting on her to make money." Feng Xiangli spat, "Who told her to bite me? She dared to bite me, I'll beat her to death. You cheap bastard." When young Qiulu heard this, she was in complete despair. She still wanted to resist, but she felt her strength draining away. Tears and mud covered her face. She looked up at the sky and seemed to see the shadow of a girl. She saw the fairy's face again, that smiling face. It was a fairy that had not appeared in front of her for a long time. She shouldn't have done this. She didn't want this to happen. There seemed to be something screaming angrily inside her body, and the temperature around her suddenly rose. Feng Xiangli only had time to say, "What's going on?" Flames suddenly engulfed the entire village. A burst of fire erupted from Yang Qiulu's body. The ferocious flames seemed capable of devouring everything. In an instant, everything was devoured. One after another, enormous flames burst out from Yang Qiulu's body. It was a temperature that seemed to be able to burn through one's heart, but she did not feel any heat. Instead, she felt a trace of tranquility. Amidst the flames, the sky was still filled with that bright and beautiful smiling face. Chapter 667. She. Meng Qingyu jumped off the sofa. There was no particular reason. The main reason was that the temperature suddenly changed. Young Qiulu's face paled, and the temperature around her soared. Meng Qingyu felt like she was in a furnace. It was already autumn, and winter was coming soon. The temperature was dropping. Such a high temperature was abnormal. When she saw young Qiulu yesterday, she felt the same. Sweat suddenly came out because of the heat, which made people feel very uncomfortable. Boom! Just then, a fire snake jumped out of Yang Qiulu's body, scaring Meng Qingyu. Qiao Jin waved her hand, and the surrounding temperature dropped significantly before slowly returning to normal. Young Qiulu, who was sleeping, suddenly opened her eyes and sat up. There was a flash of fire in her eyes. She gasped for air with her mouth open, indicating her panic and helplessness. But when she saw her surroundings, she suddenly relaxed and her tears flowed down. Meng Qingyu looked at Yang Qiulu and asked carefully, "Yang Qiulu, have you awakened?" Yang Qiulu saw Meng Qingyu, and her tears fell even harder. Qiao Jin said, "She's awakened." Flames jumped out. This was an obvious sign. Looking at Yang Qiulu's appearance, she must have suffered a lot in the backtrack array. It was only a few hours for them, but for Yang Qiulu, it was more than 10 years. The memories in her head forced her to relive those nightmarish years. She didn't know which point had stimulated her to the point of awakening. Yang Qiulu glanced at Meng Qingyu with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Then, she heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, she pounced over and hugged Meng Qingyu, crying. "But, hot, hot, hot." Meng Qingyu wanted to show her kindness, but she was scalded and screamed. The sofa where Yang Qiulu had been sitting started to smoke. Her body was so hot that it was like a burning furnace. Meng Qingyu was scalded by it. Yang Qiulu immediately stopped crying. She was stunned. Qiao Jin said slowly, "She's fire. She just awakened, and her body is hot. If not for her body's resistance to heat, you would have melted." Meng Qingyu. Damn, we're all high-grade magi. Do you have to be so cruel? Yang Qiulu was also stunned. She raised her hands and looked at them blankly. There seemed to be a string of energy flowing in her body. She didn't know how to control it, but she subconsciously wanted to force her hands out. In the next moment, 2 clusters of blazing flames appeared between her hands. Meng Qingyu was startled, and then sighed, "Amazing." Qiao Jin nodded, seemingly satisfied. High-grade magus, Hiao has someone to guide her again. I've awakened. Young Qiulu was also a little surprised. Looking at the flames in front of her, she felt like she was in a dream. It wasn't easy to escape from that terrifying life, and now she was in another world. A mysterious world. You've awakened. Meng Qingyu was very happy for her. If not for the fact that she was too hot, she wouldn't have dared to touch her. She wanted to hug Yang Qiulu and spin her around. Chapter 668. The fire in Yang Qiulu's hand dissipated, and she looked at Qiao Jin gratefully. Qiao Jin smiled at her, "This is all because of your hard work." Yang Qiulu said, "I felt like another 15 years had passed." Her tone was filled with sadness. It was so real, so obvious. "I thought I would never experience those nightmares again in my life. Now that I've experienced them again, I actually feel that this is the most painful experience I've ever had." Meng Qingyu was a little distressed. He wanted to reach out but stopped himself. "It's all in the past. Don't worry. Not only are you a high-grade magus now, you can also join the spirit group and enjoy the best benefits with me. You won't encounter those things again in the future. If you can't stand it, just beat them up." Qiao Jin was watching from the side. She couldn't be too violent. Qiao Jin glanced at her, and there seemed to be a faint smile on her lips. Meng Qingyu looked away guiltily. She was different. Young Qiulu had awakened in the backtracking formation, while Meng Qingyu had killed in Jingsong. The two of them were fundamentally different, but Xiao Jin had made it very clear back then. As long as it was Meng Qingyu's choice, she knew the price she had to pay. Young Qiulu gradually became excited. Can I really join the spirit group? Yes. Xiao Jin nodded and called He Yao. I have another high-grade magus here. Do you want her? Of course. Boss, you're too awesome. He Yao was so excited that she almost died. In the past, it was hard enough to find a normal wizard. Now, in the hands of a big shot, high-grade wizards could be found everywhere. Was this the reality of the world? However, she still reminded him, now that two high-grade wizards have joined my side, if another one comes in, it might arouse suspicion. You can let someone else take care of this one. But don't worry, they are all trustworthy and have a good relationship with me. Besides, ordinary people joined the spirit group for the sake of social stability. Basically, people who joined the spirit group for the first time would not come into contact with many schemes and machinations. Xiao Jin said, I won't care about that. You can distribute them. In any case, she was the one looking after the newly joined Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu. Xiao Jin didn't care if they were under He Yao or not. Xiao Jin had already contacted them, and Yang Qiulu was very happy. Meng Qingyu had already told her about the benefits of joining the spirit group, and the most important was the life. Meng Qingyu added, the benefits of the spirit group are very good, and most of the time, there is nothing to do. If you really don't want to study, you can find an easy job to disguise yourself. Don't worry, you can find the spirit group to arrange it. The spirit group was filled with the spies of the various large families. It was simply too convenient to assign these people an easy job. Young Qiulu nodded happily. Calm seeing the simple and relaxed smiles on the girls' faces, Xiao Jin raised his eyebrows. For some people, after experiencing the most despairing things in the world, just a little change was enough to let them let go of their worries and be very happy. Compared to Meng Qingyu's awakening, when Yang Qiulu awakened, the formation points didn't do anything. This meant that Yang Qiulu wouldn't turn dark. She awakened naturally, but she had suffered too much. Chapter 669. Now that Yang Qiulu and Meng Qingyu had awakened, ordinary people were no match for them. Meng Qingyu still had to explain most of the rules to her, so Xiao Jin didn't stay for long and quickly returned home. She even managed to finish her meal in time. Today was Mu Jinming's first day of business at home. They were already used to Xiao Jin leaving early and returning late. Seeing that Xiao Jin was back, Xiao Fei waved her hand excitedly and asked the kitchen to prepare another set of cutlery. She asked, Jin, do you have classes tomorrow? Tomorrow was Monday, so Xiao Jin had to go back to school. Xiao Jin looked at her and said calmly, you can go later in the afternoon. What's the matter? Xiao Fei said excitedly, come with me to watch a movie tomorrow. Your dad doesn't have time either. Mu Jinming coughed. I said that I can go with you later. Aren't you happy that I booked the entire theater? Xiao Fei was extremely unwilling. You always run away halfway when you watch a movie with me. Besides, what's the atmosphere if you book the entire theater? I'll go with Jin. Others don't know that I'm Jin's mother. Seeing how young I am, they'll think that I'm Jin's older sister. If I go with you, everyone will know that I'm married. Everyone? Mu Jinming took a deep breath. Do you want everyone to think that you're not married? What do you mean by that? Xiao Fei, guess. Mu Jinming, Musichu ate quietly. He was already used to the atmosphere of this house. Xiao Jin's lips curled up. He took the rice that the servants served him and said, okay, I can go with you at noon. After that, I'll go back to school. Okay. Xiao Fei was happy. I haven't watched a movie with you in a long time. This topic was a little sensitive. In the past, Xiao Fei and Xiao Jin lived alone. No matter what they did, Xiao Jin would accompany her. Indeed, it had been a long time since Xiao Fei and Xiao Jin went out to do anything alone. Going to the movies or shopping felt like a long time ago. Everyone knew the reason. Hence, the atmosphere was tense for a moment. Musichu still didn't say anything. Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. Xiao Jin took a bite of the food and thought about her and Song Yanqing. She wanted to let everyone know what had happened, so she said softly, I have something to tell you. Mu Xiangshan immediately glanced at her. Mu Qichu, who was eating, also looked at her. Xiao Fei stared at her nervously. What do you want to talk about? Every time she heard Xiao Fei's words, she felt she would be this. Mu Zhenming also looked at her and said directly, you want to buy a house. Everyone else, Xiao Fei pinched Mu's arm. Xiao Jin smiled and said, not really. It's about Song Yanqing and I. Song Yanqing and I are officially dating. He's my boyfriend now. I'm just informing you about this. The atmosphere was strangely silent. Xiao Fei almost thought she was hearing things. She almost screamed, but she felt that it would ruin the atmosphere, so she held it in. She widened her eyes and looked at Xiao Jin. Mu Zhenming lowered his eyes. He seemed to be thinking about something. Amidst the silence, Mu Xiangshan slowly opened his mouth and said, as expected, I guessed right again. As expected of me. Mu Zhenming and Xiao Fei, Musichu paused for a moment and then continued eating. Chapter 670. You're dating. Xiao Fei stammered as if he was in a dream. When did this happen? Last night, didn't Xiao Jin say that he would consider keeping a distance from Lord Song? Xiao Jin said seriously, Fei, I think what you said makes sense, so I told Song Yanqing last night. Song Yanqing also thinks what you said makes sense. In order not to make things difficult for you, he decided to date me. So now, he's my boyfriend. It's normal for me to get along with him in the future. Xiao Fei, she thought of what she said last night. Don't be a green tea. She never expected that Xiao Jin would give her a heavy blow today. Indeed, it was impossible for her to have such a chance because they were dating. Although Mu Zhenming didn't know much, he knew that Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin were close. Now that he knew that they were dating, he wasn't too surprised. Mu Xiangshan looked at Xiao Fei at this time. I don't know what you're thinking. Isn't it normal for them to be dating? This day will come sooner or later. You haven't heard what people are saying. It was a tacit agreement. Otherwise, how could the Song family not be anxious and find a fiancé for Song Yanqing? Xiao Fei, how is it normal? The main thing was that Jin had been denying it, and Xiao Fei had believed it. Now that Xiao Fei thought about it carefully, Jin had lied to her. She was heartbroken. Xiao Jin didn't care how shocked she was and continued, I'm just dating Song Yanqing. Nothing else has changed. Fei, you don't have to be so surprised. Xiao Fei, Mu Xiangshan, think positively. She might get married in the future. Do you really want her to be alone for the rest of her life? Xiao Fei, after a few rounds of attacks, Xiao Fei finally gave up. How great was the Lord Song? Although he was 5 years older, now that he thought about it, 5 years older wasn't a big deal. She was so outstanding. What was wrong with dating Xiao Jin? After Mu Xiangshan finished his meal, he wiped his mouth with a napkin and looked at Xiao Jin with satisfaction. Get along well. As expected of you, you can even take down young Master Song. Xiao Fei, Dad, what kind of twisted logic are you spouting? Mu Xiangshan left the table first, followed by Musichu. The whole family seemed to have accepted Xiao Jin's situation very smoothly, except for Xiao Fei, who was shocked at first. She even seriously reflected on what she had said last night that made the two of them date each other. That's not right. Xiao Jin said that she had told Song Yanqing last night. Xiao Fei realized something. Xiao Jin, why do you always tell young Master Song everything? As a girl, you have to hide your thoughts. Do you understand? Xiao Jin was puzzled. If I don't tell him, how will he know why I changed the way I get along with him? And I'm not like what you think. Fei Fei, you can rest assured now. Xiao Fei, her daughter didn't want to get married, so she started to worry. Now that she was dating Lord Song, she didn't know why she also felt worried. Was she worried that Xiao Jin found a boyfriend too early? But the boyfriend was Lord Song. Xiao Fei felt that she didn't know what was good for her. When Xiao Jin finished eating and went upstairs, Xiao Fei was still thinking. Mu Jinming's attitude was indifferent. She has always been on good terms with Lord Song. It's normal for them to change their relationship now. What are you worried about? The child is still young, and it's too early to get married. Don't think about it. Chapter 671. After pausing for 3 seconds, Xiao Fei suddenly propped up his chin and asked Mu Jinming, "Hey, do you think their children will be as good-looking as fried chicken?" How good-looking would they be? Mu Jinming was speechless. He was making blind guesses. While Musichu was reading in his room, Musilian called back. Usually, he would either call Xiao Fei directly or call Musichu. Musichu took this opportunity to say, "By the way, Xiao Jin and brother Yanqing are dating." Musilian was speechless. There was dead silence on the other side of the phone. After a while, a man howled, "Fuck, that's impossible, right?" Musichu was expressionless. Are you saying that brother Yanqing is blind or that Xiao Jin is blind? Musilian was speechless. He didn't dare to say either of them. Musilian said, I knew it. There's no such thing as a pure friendship between a man and a woman in this world. I knew it wasn't normal. Xiao Jin, that evil person, was finally taken down by her. That's brother Yanqing we're talking about. Musichu, I think brother Yanqing confessed. Musilian. Playing hard to get, humph. Musichu didn't want to discuss this with him. Musilian started to complain. Brother, training every day is so hard. I want to come back. Musichu, there's still 1 year and 10 months left. Good luck. Musilian was speechless. Are you human? Are you a demon? Xiao Jin took this opportunity to inform Mu Qizhi. However, Mu Qizhi rarely contacted her, so she only called to inform him. Mu Qizhi seemed a little surprised, but also somewhat within his expectations. He was silent for a moment before he said, since it's your choice, then continue to get along with him. Big brother will support you. Xiao Jin, yes. She didn't say that it was just to make it easier for her to get along with Song Yanqing. Xiao Jin then asked, Qizhi, has Ho Wan been looking for you recently? Although Mu Qizhi did not like the mention of that person, Ho Wan was Mu Qizhi's ex-girlfriend after all. Hence, Mu Qizhi was not so petty. He said calmly, no, she apologized to me again because of Shang Yiran. I told her that she should apologize to Qi Chu, and we did not contact each other again. Not long after Musichu's accident, everyone knew that Shang Yiran was his younger brother when Ji Sikai came to apologize. Moreover, Ji Sikai had directly broken one of Shang Yiran's legs. The Mu family could not say anything about this. They also knew Ji Sikai's temper. Even if he beat Shang Yiran to death, it did not seem so strange. Musicha was also fine, so this matter was temporarily put to rest. However, they heard that Ji Sikai did not get his father's permission when he beat Shang Yiran. These days, Ji Sikai had been arguing with Shang Yiran. Yesterday, when Ji Pingan brought Ji Sikai over, they talked about this matter. It was said that Ji Pingan even helped to defend Ji Sikai. It was his own son who did this, and Qiao Jin was also involved. It was obvious who Ji Pingan was helping. Qiao Jin said, "Oh." After talking to Mu Qiji, she hung up the phone. Qiao Fei came to her again. Although he was curious about Song Yanqing's relationship with her, he did not ask in detail. Instead, he said, "You were not at home yesterday, and Grandpa Ji did not see you. If you have time tomorrow, let's go to Grandpa Ji's house for a meal first." Chapter 672. Qiao Jin listened to Qiao Fei's suggestion and nodded slowly. Ji Pingan was quite regretful that he didn't see Qiao Jin yesterday. If Qiao Fei could bring him there, he would be very happy. The next day, Qiao Jin and Qiao Fei went to see Ji Pingan. But they didn't expect Ji Sikai to be there. He seemed to have moved in. When Qiao Jin went in and saw him, he was wearing a black shirt and trousers, watering Ji Pingan's plants out of boredom. When he saw Qiao Jin, he raised his eyes and a faint light flashed in his eyes. When Ji Sikai saw Qiao Fei and Qiao Fei, he took the initiative to greet them. "Auntie Qiao, Qiao Jin." Qiao Fei was surprised to see Ji Sikai here. "Sikai, you're here too." Ji Sikai smiled. "Things haven't been going well at home recently, so I came to stay with third grandpa for a few days." Qiao Fei understood immediately. It was most likely because of Shang Yiran. Of course, Ji Sikai had broken his leg. Qiao Fei felt that this young man was quite evil. But when she thought of how that bastard Shang Yiran took it out on her child, she felt that Ji Sikai had done a good job. From the perspective of Ji Sikai's father, his son had hit another son so hard. He was probably angry. It was understandable why Ji Sikai didn't want to go back. She nodded and didn't say anything. Qiao Jin walked over. She glanced at Ji Sikai indifferently and didn't say anything. Ji Pingan received the news and came out of the inner room. When he saw Qiao Fei and Qiao Jin, he was very happy. "You're here. It's good that you're here." When Ji Pingan saw Qiao Jin, warmth flashed in his eyes. "Jin." Qiao Jin nodded and called, "Old master." Ji Pingan nodded. He was very satisfied to be able to see Qiao Jin now. Ji Sikai sneered at the side. He also walked over and sat beside them, casually listening to their conversation. But his gaze would occasionally sweep over Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin treated him as heir and let him look. As Qiao Fei and Ji Pingan chatted, the topic somehow turned to Song Yanqing. Qiao Fei was straightforward and said, "Lord Song and Jin are dating now." "They are dating." Ji Pingan was a little surprised. When Ji Sikai heard this, the smile on his lips gradually disappeared. Even his expression seemed to have slowly sunk. However, none of them noticed the change in him. Qiao Jin noticed it, but she didn't care. Qiao Jin answered herself, "Yesterday." "Oh, it's a good thing." Ji Pingan was also very satisfied. Yanqing is good in every way. No one can find fault with her. I heard that she has almost recovered. Good, good. This was the expression of an elder looking at his future grandson-in-law. Of course, the more he thought about it, the more satisfied he was. Who wouldn't be satisfied with a family like the Song family? Ji Sikai suddenly stood up and said slowly, "Third Grandpa, I have something to do. I'll go out first. I'll be back later." Ji Pingon immediately asked, "Don't you have lunch?" Ji Sikai looked at Xiao Jin and smiled with a slightly gloomy expression. No. After that, he left. His strange attitude was noticed by Ji Pingon. Only Xiao Fei didn't react. She waved her hand enthusiastically. "Take care, Sikai. Come to the Mu family when you have time." She was being polite. Ji Sikai, who was about to leave, paused and then said, "Okay, Aunt Xiao." Chapter 673. After Ji Sikai left, Xiao Jin and Xiao Fei stayed for dinner. At the dinner table, Xiao Fei was still concerned about the gossip of the Ji family. "What's wrong with Sikai's father now?" Ji Pingon sighed and then snorted unhappily. "He's old and his brain is muddled. He's even worse than us. He doesn't even know who his biological son is. Especially this time, he had targeted Xiao Jin's elder brother, Musichu. It was said that he had targeted the Mu family as well. If Ji Sikai hadn't discovered it early, who knew how big of a mistake he would have made? Ji Pingon felt that it was a good lesson. When one was young, one had to suffer to remember it for the rest of one's life. Ji Sikai was ruthless, but if it had been Mu Xiangshan from the Mu family, his grandson, who had almost died, he might not have been soft-hearted. Xiao Fei couldn't talk about the secrets of the rich families. Moreover, the one who had died was her son. She just glanced at Xiao Jin and said, "It's fine as long as the other things belong to Sikai." He was a father, so he didn't have to take it. Every family had its own difficulties. Ji Pingon sneered. "He dares to give it to others. My elder brother isn't dead yet." He valued his grandson, Ji Sikai, the most. What was outside was still outside. Ji Sikai dared to break Shang Yiran's leg because he was confident. So what if he was scolded by his father? He could only scold him a little. Xiao Jin wasn't interested in the secrets of the rich families. She thought that the Song family was better. Song Yanqing's elder sister, Song Suyu, didn't have many pursuits. She also helped the family. The two siblings had more than they could spend, so they didn't need to do anything else. Therefore, the relationship between the siblings was very good. Unlike here, where things were complicated. Even the three brothers of the Mu family were simple-minded. Every big clan had its own internal conflicts. After lunch, Xiao Fei and Xiao Jin went to watch a movie in the afternoon. Xiao Jin didn't return to school until class was about to start. He was just in time for her class. After class, Zhongli Peining invited her to have a meal. This time, she actually told her about the array masters of the spirit group. This time, it is said that the array masters found a place in Nanjiang. There are some problems, and many people have already died. The local spirit group in Nanjiang is asking for help from our imperial capital. Xiao Jin paused for a moment. "Why are you telling me this? Isn't this your spirit group's problem?" Zhongli Peining looked to the side and whispered, "Because this involves array masters, I know you don't want to join the spirit group, but I want to ask you, will you earn extra money? We can pay you 10 million for this favor. You just need to follow them and take a look. If there are any problems, you can withdraw in advance." Wow, 10 million. Money was not the main thing, but Zhongli Peining would not tell her this for no reason. Some things would naturally be pushed to Xiao Jin. So, this Nanjiang, there was a big problem. Xiao Jin lowered his eyes. He was so calm that no waves could be seen. "What's the problem?" It's a large-scale mausoleum of array masters. The specifications are very strong. For the time being, we don't know the origin. We can only speculate that it's the mausoleum of an ancient array master. Qiao Jin looked up at her. Zhongli Peining automatically added, "We suspect that the ancient array master is an array master from the previous era. We don't know the specific time period, but according to the investigation, the mausoleum has existed for 4,000 years. 4,000 years, it was almost a shocking number. But it was still a little far from her era." Chapter 674. Seeing that she was thinking, Zhongli Peining continued to ask, "So, do you want to go?" Qiao Jin looked at her and curled his lips. 10 million. If there's any problem, I can withdraw in advance. This condition is so generous that it's excessive. You're willing to pay this price to invite me, which means that it won't be easy to withdraw after I go, right? Thinking about it, it was obvious that the tomb of an ancient array master was definitely not something that ordinary people could peek into. Even the tomb of Hu Qin that Qiao Jin went to last time couldn't be compared at all. Although it wasn't a big deal for Qiao Jin, this matter was obviously a trap. The only difference was whether he jumped or not. However, they also didn't know that no matter whose tomb it was not worth mentioning to Qiao Jin. The key was what would be in the tomb. Zhongli Peining choked for a moment, knowing that she couldn't hide it from her. She looked a little embarrassed and then a little worried. There's no other way. This ancient array master, we suspect, is related to a curse. After going there, basically all of our people have been cursed. Now, no ordinary spiritual psyche masters are willing to go there, so we're looking for array masters. Only array masters can break this trap. In the end, Zhongli Peining still didn't dare to fool Qiao Jin. After all, whether Qiao Jin went or not was purely up to her free will. She couldn't force her. After hearing this, Qiao Jin directly said, "Okay." Zhongli Peining, she had already made it clear. Qiao Jin still wanted to go to such an obvious trap, which made Zhongli Peining hesitate for a moment. "You agreed just like that?" Qiao Jin said, "Since you've already asked me, wouldn't it be unreasonable if I didn't agree?" Zhongli Peining, you've always been unreasonable. However, Qiao Jin agreed, which surprised Zhongli Peining. This place was helpless against ancient magic circle masters because there were no magic circle masters around. Normal wizards didn't even know about the existence of magic circle masters, so how could they deal with this ancient tomb? Seeing that Qiao Jin agreed, Zhongli Peining explained the matter more specifically. The mausoleum of an ancient array master was not easy to find. Since ancient times, many array masters had disappeared in the long river of history. There were very few who could leave behind a few words, not to mention a mausoleum with obvious abnormalities. This person must have been an almighty array master when he was alive. There was only one thing that a formation master could leave behind. Formation point. The array point was a good thing. The fact that Qiao Jin had obtained Hu Qin's backtracking array point was the best example. Some array points existed in the world, while some array points were born with array masters. Other than the array masters who were willing to keep them, no one else could take them. The more array points they controlled, the more powerful a formation master would be. This time, the mausoleum of a magic circle master appeared in the southern border. It had been buried for a long time. A group of backpackers entered the southern border mountains to explore and accidentally found this mausoleum. At that time, they didn't know what it was. After entering, they only touched the entrance of the passage. When they came out, something happened. They were cursed. Only a magic circle master could have this kind of ability. Later, they sent people to investigate and confirm that it was a mausoleum that had existed for 4,000 years. However, what exactly was inside? The wizards were all wiped out before they could enter, so naturally, they didn't dare to touch it. That was why Zhongli Peining came to Qiao Jin. She just thought that Qiao Jin had always been mysterious and wanted to see if she had any ideas. Chapter 675. After Qiao Jin heard this, he asked directly, "What's the reaction to the curse?" Zhongli Peining immediately understood and said directly, "When those people returned home, green moss grew all over their bodies." You know moss, right? It's like ringworm on your body. It's very uncomfortable and itchy. They're still in the hospital now. The doctors can't do anything about it. Their vital signs are very weak. I don't know if they'll all. This was what the curse array point was afraid of. No one knew what would happen in the end. After Qiao Jin heard this, he only said, "It's a very simple backfire curse. Those who shouldn't have entered the mausoleum will be cursed. They'll recover in a month." A month? Zhongli Peining was a little surprised. Is this true? Qiao Jin nodded, but his eyes were a little deep. It's just a simple mistake to enter the mausoleum. It's just a small punishment. If you touch something you shouldn't touch, who knows? Zhongli Peining's face turned pale again. It was obvious that this was only for those who entered the mausoleum by mistake. If they didn't enter the mausoleum by mistake, the curse wouldn't be so simple. Then, is there a way? Zhongli Peining wasn't an array master. She didn't know how dangerous it was inside. Qiao Jin said, "I don't know. I'll only know when I see the mausoleum. I don't want money. I only have one request." Zhongli Peining nodded. "Say it." "In the mausoleum, other than the array point, everything else belongs to you. Even if there are clues to other array points hidden." Zhongli Peining felt suffocated. The reason why the spirit group was so excited to find a 4,000-year-old ancient array master's mausoleum was because of the array point. Now that Qiao Jin pointed out the array point, wouldn't their trip be meaningless? However, what did she dare to say? She looked a little embarrassed. "I actually don't know much about array masters. But you know that the array point is very important, so I have to ask the spirit group first. You can just tell them that it doesn't matter," Qiao Jin said with a perfect smile. "If I don't go, you won't be able to get the array point." It wasn't that Qiao Jin looked down on them, but the mausoleum of a 4,000-year-old ancient array master was definitely not something that could be broken into by modern people. If it was the people behind the Holy Family, there might be some hope. But how would they dare to come to Huaxia? If he came to China, he would be treated as a live target by Qiao Jin. He might even die. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that there was a mysterious person who hadn't shown himself yet. However, if there was a very powerful formation point, Qiao Jin would definitely sense it. She didn't panic at all. Zhongli Peining, the big shot, had a tight grip on the gate of life. Of course, she couldn't say anything, but she had underestimated him in her heart. Now that Qiao Jin had openly expressed her abilities, it meant that she had never been afraid of the spirit group. No wonder she had always been fearless. Zhongli Peining was glad that she didn't start a feud with her from the beginning. She knew that if an array master wanted to kill someone, his methods were much more terrifying than an ordinary wizard. Zhongli Peining said that she wanted to call the spirit group to let them think about it. Qiao Jin didn't stop her. She returned to the dormitory and called Song Yanqing. She asked directly, "Have you had any dreams recently? Or did you foresee anything in Nanjiang?" After all, he was a spiritualist. There was nothing wrong with asking him. Chapter 676. When Song Yanqing heard her question, he paused and said directly, "No, do you have something related to Nanjiang?" Qiao Jin said, "Well, I'm likely to go to Nanjiang." There is an array master's mausoleum there. There may be array points. Although I'm not interested in cursed array points, since this matter has been pushed to me, I'll go and take a look. Since you didn't sense it, then forget it. This meant that this matter had nothing to do with Songyanqing. Nanjiang. Nanjiang is very far. Nanjiang had always been a mysterious place in the hearts of the Chinese people. Nanjiang was mostly mountainous. In this land, there were many mysterious ethnic groups, and many mysterious legends were passed down. Voodoo, witchcraft, and because it was mostly mountainous, there were many large mausoleums in Nanjiang. There was even no lack of emperors' mausoleums. There was a saying in Nanjiang, if you walk in the wild, you may step on a graveyard. With such a legend, it added a gloomy color to the southern border. Songyanqing frowned slightly. Do you need me to go with you? Qiao Jin said, that's not necessary. You can do your own things in the capital. If you don't sense it, it means that this matter has nothing to do with you. Moreover, I'm going with the array master of the spirit group. It's not appropriate for you to show up. Songyanqing thought of the current situation of the spirit group and raised his eyebrows. Why would the array master of the spirit group go with you? Qiao Jin couldn't help but laugh. I don't quite understand their thoughts. Zhongli Peining found me and said that she would give me 10 million to ask me to help. There are so many array masters in the spirit group, so it's impossible for her to find a wild array master like me for no reason. I'm inclined to think that there's a big problem with this mausoleum. Someone wants to dig a hole for me to suffer. Even if I don't suffer, they want to see how strong I am. The Feng family had fallen, but there were still several families behind the spirit group. There were still a bunch of array masters behind them who hadn't shown up, but it didn't mean that the Feng family's ancestor was the strongest. Songyanqing sighed. Why? In the end, she had no choice but to jump into the pit herself by always finding fault with Qiao Jin. He said softly, since you're going, then be careful. If there's anything, you must give me a call. He still couldn't let go of the dream he had. Qiao Jin had fainted in a cave. When did that happen? Was he in great danger? However, since he didn't sense the southern border, it meant that this matter wasn't in the southern border. His heart still felt a lot better. Qiao Jin replied, okay. She had to wait for Zhongli Peining and the others to arrange the time. Probably because of the urgency of the situation, Zhongli Peining told her the next day that the array master of the spirit group had agreed, but they had to set off now. Qiao Jin definitely needed an excuse to apply for leave, but they directly went through the official channels and gave Qiao Jin a legitimate reason to leave, so the school did not ask. As for Qiao Fei, it was better not to tell them, so as not to make Qiao Fei worry. Qiao Jin finally saw another legendary spirit group, which was a team composed of array masters. Among them, she saw an acquaintance. The other party was very short, and his pupils turned out to be a rare double pupil. When he looked at people, he had a particularly mysterious feeling. Although he was not extraordinary, his eyes were enough to attract people's attention. Qiao Jin had sensed the other party when she was beside Ji Sikai. The other party must know Qiao Jin's identity, but he didn't know that Qiao Jin knew him. So when he saw Qiao Jin, the short man had no expression on his face. Chapter 677. In addition to him, there were 3 other men and 1 woman. Including Qiao Jin, there were only 6 array masters. This might not be all the array masters of the spirit group, but it also showed that there were very few array masters. Moreover, not every array master had the ability to challenge an ancient array master's tomb. The 3 men were all different in appearance, and there was a big difference in their temperaments. One of them even looked at Qiao Jin and was amazed by her. They were all dressed very luxuriously, and it looked like they were usually flattered. After all, they were array masters, and some of their abilities were enough for him to live a good life. The last girl was biting on a lollipop. She looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old, and she looked obedient and pure. She was wearing a rather exaggerated loli princess dress. Coupled with her ability to look like a loli, she looked like a cosplay enthusiast. She looked at Xiao Jin with a smile, and when she saw Xiao Jin, she took the initiative to greet her. "Hello, Sister Xiao Jin, my name is Ji Meng Meng." Xiao Jin raised her eyebrows slightly. "Hello, Ji Meng Meng." Because of her cute appearance, even her name was so suitable. Of the other four, 3 ignored Xiao Jin, although they were also a little shocked by Xiao Jin's appearance. However, they had seen all kinds of beautiful women, and their hearts were calm. Because Xiao Jin was not a member of the spirit group, they did not find her pleasing to the eye. The only exception was the boy whose eyes lit up when he saw Xiao Jin. He greeted Ji Meng Meng enthusiastically. "Hello, my name is Xiao Yuandan." Xiao Jin. "Hello." This name was quite festive. Xiao Yuandan scratched his head. "Is my name a little strange? When I was young, I was born on New Year's Day, and my mother gave me this name for convenience. I can't not recognize my parents, so I just changed my name, right?" "Xiao Jin, that makes sense." Xiao Yuandan laughed. He looked like an ordinary sunny boy, and other than Ji Meng Meng, he was probably the lightest of the 4 men. The other 3 snorted coldly to varying degrees. They skipped the greeting step and waited to board the plane. There weren't many people flying to Nanjiang. The 6 of them occupied the first-class cabin, which was just right for a conversation. Ji Meng Meng simply sat with Xiao Jin and asked her with a smile, "Sister Xiao Jin, I heard that you want the array point inside." Xiao Jin looked down at her. "Yes." The short man sitting opposite her let out a cold snort. Ji Meng Meng widened her eyes, looking curious and cute. "Sister Xiao Jin, are you so sure that there are array points inside?" "Xiao Jin, if not, I'll take 10 million. Neither side was at a disadvantage. Ji Meng Meng, Xiao Yuandan, on the other hand, had a lively personality. He immediately asked the 3 of them, "Is there any news from that side? Or did they not break in? Oh." One of them seemed to reluctantly respond to Zhao Yuandan's question. He said in a muffled voice, "If there's no news, it means that they haven't broken in yet. The mausoleum of an ancient array master is not so easy to break in." Zhao Yuandan smacked his lips. An array master who is good at curses is not easy to deal with. "I'm really afraid that if I get infected with some strange curse, it will be GG when I come back." The man who answered sneered. "What are you afraid of? We have 10 million to hire foreign aid. They said that without her, we can't get the array point. What else can we do? We can only wait for the master to perform." Chapter 678. It was obvious who he was referring to, judging from the tone of his words. Zhao Yuandan glanced at Xiao Jin awkwardly. Xiao Jin didn't care at all. He didn't even blink his eyes. Looking at her calm appearance, Ji Meng Meng glanced at her, then glanced at the person who spoke. She burst into laughter. "Lu Ren, don't be so sarcastic. Look at him. He has the demeanor of a great god. You are just like a henchman next to him." Lu Ren's face stiffened. He sneered and didn't speak. Zhao Yuandan whispered to Xiao Jin again, "He is like this. Don't mind him." Xiao Jin probably understood. Probably these people knew that she wanted to take the array points and were not convinced, but why did they agree? She curled her lips, nodded, and didn't speak. Xiao Jin was a little famous in the capital, but it was not obvious. The Feng family's matter was strange, but not many people would directly suspect Xiao Jin. After all, a family was finished. Who knew what was going on? They were more inclined to believe that a few array masters joined forces to target the Feng family. In addition, the Feng family itself was seeking death, so it was miserable to this point. As for Xiao Jin, he was just a somewhat strange array master. This time, the spirit group invited her to be foreign aid. They might have the intention to win her over, but these array masters who had been in the organization were not convinced. The journey to Nanjiang was very long. The plane flew for 3 hours before arriving at this legendary land. Nanjiang City still had a main city. It was surrounded by mountains. The city center was surrounded in the middle of the mountain range. It could be said to be a naturally sealed place. It was just that the country did not believe in ghosts and gods now. The development here was very good. The modern metropolis of Nanjiang had long lost the mysterious taste of the past. Perhaps only in those deep mountains and seeing those ancient villages that were still sealed in the mountains could one understand the mysterious legends at that time. The plane landed, and it began to drizzle in Nanjiang City. A continuous chill was transmitted into people's bones along with the wet and cold air. It was so cold that people couldn't open their bodies. Now that it was October, the weather was getting colder. The spirit team arranged a hotel for them to stay in. When they arrived, only Ji Mengmeng, Xiao Yuandan, and Xiao Jin stayed in the hotel. The other 3 went directly to the local spirit team to find out about the situation. Since Ji Mengmeng and Xiao Yuandan were both there, Xiao Jin did not ask further. She didn't need to ask anything. She would naturally know when he returned. Xiao Jin was in the room, lying on the sofa and calling Song Yanqing leisurely. "I've arrived at Nanjiang City." The girl's obedient report came into his ears, and it seemed to make his tiredness of the day dissipate. Song Yanqing outlined his gentle eyebrows. "How is it over there?" Xiao Jin looked out of the window. "It's pretty good. It's raining here." "What about the capital?" "Song Yanqing, it's sunny in the capital. You should wear more clothes. Don't catch a cold." Xiao Jin said, "I won't catch a cold." Her physical fitness was good, and she would never have such a small illness. Song Yanqing paused for a moment and laughed. "I forgot. He was not sick now, let alone a person like Xiao Jin." Song Yanqing glanced at the document in his hand and pushed it away. He stood up and looked out of the window with deep eyes. He said in a low and gentle voice, "When you come back, I will find a chance to formally visit Uncle Mu and Aunt Xiao." Chapter 679. He used to visit the Mu family and hang out with his friends. Now it was different. Xiao Jin was already his girlfriend, so he had to pay her a visit. Otherwise, others would think that he didn't care about Xiao Jin and didn't even visit her parents. Xiao Jin didn't care. "Okay, they know it now anyway." Song Yanqing said, "Well, okay. You just got off the plane. Have a good rest. When are you going to take action?" Xiao Jin said, "Maybe tomorrow." They went to ask the local Lingji group about the information they have. Song Yanqing asked, "Do you feel anything unusual now?" Xiao Jin said, "No, it's too far away." She thought for a moment, looked out of the window, and continued, "Nanjiang is different from other places. There are many unusual situations here." She even felt the fluctuations of several array points. Those array points were big and small, strong and weak. But they were not very attractive to her now. And this was only in the city of Nanjiang. She had never felt so many array point fluctuations in other cities. Nanjiang was an extraordinary city. Song Yanqing paused and lowered his eyes. "Be careful." Xiao Jin said, "I will." At this time, the doorbell rang. Xiao Jin said goodbye to Song Yanqing and hung up the phone. He opened the door and saw Ji Mengmeng outside. She was still biting her lollipop and looking cute. Sister Xiao Jin, they are back. We can go to Zhao Yuandan's room to share the information. Of course, the information was about the mausoleum of the ancient array masters. Xiao Jin nodded and followed Ji Mengmeng. They entered Zhao Yuandan's room. They had already begun to discuss in the room. The speaker was one of the people who disliked Xiao Jin, Lu Ren. Seeing Ji Mengmeng come in with Xiao Jin, he didn't say anything. He just said, if there are no objections, we will take action tonight. Zhao Yuandan said, Xiao Jin is here. Shall we tell her about the situation first? Lu Ren sneered, does the great master need to know the situation? It's so simple. The Lingji group went in and was wiped out. Everyone is in the hospital now. Ji Mengmeng took out her lollipop and looked a little annoyed. Why do you all like to take action at night? Zhao Yuandan said, it's to hide at night. Since there was no one around, they wouldn't cause too much of a commotion when they used the array formation, so it wouldn't attract the attention of others. Xiao Jin did not care whether they talked about the situation at the scene or not. She just glanced at Lu Ren meaningfully and then turned around indifferently. Okay, let's go now. Everyone, they didn't expect Xiao Jin to be so straightforward. The short man spoke for the first time. His voice was a little hoarse, we have to leave now. It's a long way. They have a car to pick them up, but it will be at least midnight when we get there. We have to make some preparations. If you are hungry, bring some food. Ji Mengmeng said, but I don't know the situation yet. I just went to call Sister Xiao Jin. Zhao Yuandan said in a friendly manner, it's okay. I will tell you on the car. It's just two very simple pieces of news. We can't know the rest even if we want to. There was too little information about the mausoleum. Except that the array master might be a curse array master, there was no other information. Xiao Jin walked in front. When Lu Ren was about to leave, the short man suddenly said, don't target her. She is more evil than the Feng family. Chapter 680. Lu Ren immediately turned back to look at him, somewhat puzzled. What do you mean? Array masters like them thought highly of themselves. Usually, even if there were any news channels, they would only pay attention to themselves. They had only heard of Xiao Jin's appearance in the capital by chance. They didn't know the specific situation. But the Feng family had been in such a big mess recently that everyone knew about it. Firstly, they didn't dare to imagine that the Feng family would do things to such an extent. Secondly, Xiao Jin was even more evil than the Feng family. Then, the short man was called Lu Xian. At this time, he just had a sullen face. Not knowing is the most dangerous thing. He left this inexplicable sentence and walked forward first. Lu Ren was even more puzzled. At this moment, he didn't finish. He suddenly got angry and pulled Zhao Yuandan. What do you think he means? Zhao Yuandan pointed to Xiao Jin, who hadn't gone too far ahead, and whispered, at least don't talk about it in front of her. She was still here. If she remembered it in her heart, it would be awkward. Everyone met for the first time. They didn't know each other's temperament. Who knew if the other party was big or small? It was not a wise move to make enemies with an array master. Lu Ren also saw that he was from the spirit group. There were several people in the spirit group. Xiao Jin was not from the spirit group. It was many against one, so he didn't think much of Xiao Jin. Now that Lu Xian reminded him and Zhao Yuandan didn't say anything, Lu Ren shut up resentfully. The spirit group's price was not low. They even gave the array point to the other party. He wanted to see how capable this Xiao Jin was. When they went downstairs, there was already a car waiting below the hotel. The place they were going to was very far. It was in the mountains outside Nanjing City. The road was very bad. But because of the area of Nanjing, there were many teams that liked to explore, so there were other roads. It was just too far. It was said that it would take 5 or 6 hours from here to the destination. Everyone was not familiar with each other. A large bus loaded everyone. Xiao Jin didn't like to talk. He just sat in his seat and focused on looking at his phone. Ji Mengmeng and Zhao Yuandan were seizing the time to catch up on sleep. After all, it would be the wee hours of the morning when they arrived there. If they were not in good spirits, it would not be a good sign for them. If they encountered danger, they would not be able to react in time. Apart from the driver, only Lu Xian and another array formation master were awake. Occasionally, Xiao Jin would meet the eyes of the remaining person. The other person would stare at her, sizing her up slightly, as if he was trying to figure something out. He didn't know how long the car had been driving. 2 hours later, they entered the mountainous area. Along the way, there were rugged paths. Looking around, it was all thick and boundless mountains. In this dark night, it was like a monster that chose people to devour. No one knew when it would open its mouth and swallow people. To dare to appear in these places in the middle of the night, one must have some courage. At about 2:00 in the morning, the car slowly came to a stop. The driver's voice could be heard. "Everyone, we're here." This sound instantly woke up the few array masters who were still in a daze. Although everyone wanted to rest, they were still alert. They would wake up very quickly if they encountered any noise. Everyone followed the sound and looked outside. They had already arrived at the foot of a mountain. In front of them was a jungle. Occasionally, they could even hear the sound of flowing water. At this point, the road was completely cut off. In front of them was a rugged mountain range. For the time being, they didn't have the ability to directly open up a path here. Therefore, they had to get out of the car and start walking. Chapter 681. Everyone got out of the car. The driver was waiting for them here. He would only wait until the morning. If not, he would go back in the morning. The driver who dared to come here was definitely not an ordinary person. Ji Mengmeng got out of the car and looked at the area in front of her. She muttered, "It looks very dangerous." There was no light in this mountain, and it was completely hidden in the darkness. Lu Xian took out a flashlight. When he turned on the light did not shine far, as if it was swallowed directly. They could only see an endless dense forest and the occasional squeak of small animals. They could vaguely see a road that seemed to have been walked by someone. Zhao Yuandan took out his phone and glanced at the map. "It's just in front. It will take about half an hour to reach the place. I have already drawn the map." Exploration teams often appeared here, so the map was ready-made. Everyone nodded and walked along the only road. They were all array masters, and their courage was not ordinary. Even the youngest Ji Mengmeng was not afraid in such an environment. The southern borders mountains were extremely famous. The mountain range here was continuous, and the peaks overlapped. If you went over one mountain after another, it would be surrounded by tall and dense forests. If you couldn't find a way out, then this place would definitely be a nightmare. The country had developed many mountains in recent years, but it was less than 1/10 of them. There were still many things hidden inside, waiting for humans to explore. Xiao Jin and the rest stepped into one of the mountain ranges. After entering, they were surrounded by tall trees, and it was almost impossible to see the path. Xiao Jin walked at the front. Lu Xian's flashlight naturally could not shine on her all the time. The light flickered, but Xiao Jin walked very fast, as if she was not worried that she would get lost. Gotcha, gotcha. Only the footsteps of these few people could be heard in the forest. When it was quiet, it was a little scary. Ji Mengmeng looked at Xiao Jin's back in front of her with her long hair fluttering in the wind. Although she knew that he was full of immortal aura, in the dark, Xiao Jin's back was the most frightening. She could not help but say, how did those exploration teams find such a remote place? I already said that it was an exploration team. Zhao Yuandan smiled and said, they must have walked around and found something amazing. There have always been many legends in Nanjiang, and it was the habitat of many emperors. It's not strange for an ancient array master's tomb to appear. It's just that this kind of array master's tomb usually needs some kind of opportunity to enter. I heard that these people entered by accident. Even they did not investigate the real situation. Because the array masters of the Earth Spirit Group were not good at these things, no matter how they looked at it, they could not see any problems. Only then did he ask for help from his superiors. Milo. He hadn't heard much about what happened last time. Most of the people who died were from the Spirit Group. They did not inform the array masters. Lu Ren snorted and said, I heard that they found the array points, but they went for wool and came home shorn. They died and were injured. There were array points, but they did not live to take them. Chapter 682. They all knew very well that with such a large number of casualties, there was definitely an array point inside. Unfortunately, there was no news of what the array point was. Milo, the only one who knew the news, was now missing. No one knew if he was the one who took the array point. Because of this, the Feng family had to bear a lot of responsibility. In the end, the Feng family was also gone. The spirit team had not even finished settling the score. Hey! Lu Xian's face darkened. Don't talk. There's a sound. Suddenly, they heard a strange sound. When they looked around, they found that they were still in the forest. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Xiao Jin was in front. Her light voice came. A small animal. Everyone, seeing that she was still walking smoothly, everyone had to follow. Lu Ren snorted coldly. Why are you still pretending? Can't we see it? Ji Mengmeng said. Lu Xian heard it. You didn't. Your ears are not very good. Lu Ren was angry. You didn't hear it either. Ji Mengmeng smiled. I didn't hear it. I didn't say anything. Lu Ren, everyone here was an array master. Everyone hid their abilities, but their general strength was about the same, so no one was convinced. Ji Mengmeng was the youngest, but she did not necessarily call others brother or uncle. Everyone had been walking for more than 20 minutes. Logically speaking, they should have arrived. However, Xiao Jin suddenly stopped and said very softly, we're here. Zhao Yuandan looked at his phone. The map shows that there are still a few minutes left. Although there was no signal here, they could directly estimate the distance. It did not match the place mentioned by the expedition team. Xiao Jin said, it's here. They didn't go to the opposite door. Everyone's face was a little solemn. Xiao Jin could actually say that they did not go to the opposite door directly. It meant that she had seen something. However, they did not see anything. Everyone looked at each other and began to use their own skills. They surrounded the ground and began to set up arrays. Their method of setting up arrays was very different from Xiao Jin's. They needed to connect the array points in various places around them, which was commonly known as drawing. Only array masters like them could see this thing. However, after drawing the array points, there was still nothing in front of them. They did not see anything. Everyone immediately saw the problem. They were at the end of a canyon in a mountain range. 2 more steps and they would be out of the forest. There was even a small waterfall in front of them. The waterfall flowed down the mountain rocks and accumulated in the pool in front of him. There were rocks on both sides, and there seemed to be traces of animals. Obviously, this place was a natural water spot. This kind of place wasn't rare in the southern border mountain range. However, Xiao Jin walked to the side of the pool and looked down. His eyes were calm as he said, "The entrance is below." Lu Xian stared at her with a solemn expression, but he quickly shifted his gaze to the bottom of the pool. Other than the splashes from the waterfall, there was nothing unusual on the surface of the pool. It was a very normal mountain spring. Ji Mengmeng touched her chin and asked hesitantly, "Should we go into the water?" She didn't really want to, mainly because they couldn't see anything. Now, they were all listening to Xiao Jin. That was what she thought, but someone had said it out loud. Lu Ren was not convinced. "If you say it's below, then it's below. We didn't see anything wrong. Why should we listen to you?" After he said this, Xiao Jin turned to look at him with a faint smile. Oh. Chapter 683. Being stared at by those calm and deep eyes, Lu Ren immediately swallowed. His heart throbbed inexplicably. "I'm just saying. It's up to you whether you want to go down or not." She reached out and pinched him. Then, she turned around and jumped into the pool without hesitation. With a splash, a living person jumped directly and quickly went down. The waterfall splashed quickly. In less than 2 seconds, there was no trace of Xiao Jin in the pool. Everyone, Xiao Yuandan glanced at everyone and said awkwardly, "She has already jumped. Let's jump." Xiao Yuandan believed that the person who spent 10 million yuan to find had a reason. He didn't feel any danger. He set up a simple waterproof array on himself, took 2 steps forward, and jumped. Ji Mengmeng only hesitated for a moment before jumping. 3 of the 6 people jumped. The remaining 3 looked at each other. Lu Xian and the array master jumped without hesitation. Lu Ren, what the fuck? He didn't even ask anything and just jumped. It was because they didn't see any problem that they were worried that Xiao Jin was tricking them. But now that everyone had jumped, he was the only one left on the shore. He hesitated for a moment and suddenly heard a strange sound behind him. In an instant, he felt his scalp tingle and his hair stand on end. It was the intuition of an array master. Lu Ren almost didn't think and jumped forward into the pool. Splash! The camera turned back. The light had completely dimmed. They could only see something white on the tree trunk of the dense forest beside the pool. It circled around the tree trunk and quickly shrank back. The pool water was very cold. It wasn't a big problem for Xiao Jin. Her body seemed to be separated by a layer of transparent film. The water couldn't get close to her body, so she could breathe freely underwater. This was a pool formed by a waterfall over the years. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be very deep. However, Xiao Jin jumped in and fell at least 10 meters. In front of her, there was still cold water. The figures above were also falling in one after another. Xiao Jin blinked and finally saw a faint light coming from below. It was the light of the array. They had arrived at their destination. This was just an entrance. He would only know what it was when he got closer. Xiao Jin fell the fastest and soon reached the bottom of the pool. It was still surrounded by stone walls, and the bottom of the pool was just a piece of silt. However, there was a lump of silt in the middle that was especially high, as if something was floating. Xiao Jin directly went over, and with a slight movement of his finger, a lump of sludge dispersed, revealing a copper ring underneath. It was like the doorknob of a large door. Whatever it was connected to, one would know with a pull. The fluctuations of the array formation came from above. Of course, it was not something that could be pulled open by force. Furthermore, the copper ring was located at the bottom of the pool. Once it was pulled open, all the water in the pool would instantly flow in. However, it was precisely because of the array formation that the copper ring was not necessarily as simple as it appeared on the surface. Qiao Jin looked at it from the side. Zhao Yuandan and the rest, who had landed behind, also saw the copper ring. Although they couldn't speak, they could still move freely. After Lu Ren landed, he reached out to pull the copper ring. Qiao Jin didn't stop him. The moment Lu Ren touched the copper ring, he seemed to be stabbed by something and instantly retracted his hand. When he looked again, the copper ring in front of him had turned into a human mouth. The mouth was wide open, and a row of sharp teeth could be seen clearly. Lu Ren, CTM. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.